everybody. This is the work session for the Board of Mayor and Alderman for November the 12th, 2024. We're called to order. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Blanton. Here. Alderman Caesar.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Also Vice Mayor Brown. Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Alderman Baggett. And the mayor is here
Present.
also. And I'm going to recognize Alderman Blanton before we get to citizen comments.
Thank you so much. Deb, I might need your help getting somebody to be still. We are having one of our really in my opinion, everybody's important that works in our city, staff and family. And I'm going to try not to get emotional. And he's mad at me and I don't really care. Steve Grubb, who is our streets department director, is retiring soon. And I asked him tonight at the meeting, I was like, is this your last meeting? He goes, don't you dare. So I am daring.
You lose.
Well, Steve, he is a very unique person. He has a heart for this community, but he has a heart for people. And he goes the extra mile, not only with what he does for our citizens, but what he does for his team. He loves on them like they're his family. And he is always available, maybe not on the first phone call, but he'll call you back. But the way that he works with Monique on special events, you think streets department and you think you know what that means, but his footprint is all over this community. And we have a really great opportunity with Jerry Hatcher, who will assume his role. And it is no offense to Jerry, but it is a huge loss. Personally, for me, for our community, and I need to publicly admonish all you have done. You don't ever get to steal my pork chop off my plate. But thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the great care that you give in everything you do. And I will miss you hugely.
Yep.
And I wanted to publicly recognize you for all you've done for all of us. I love you. Thank you.
You're a week. I got one more job for you.
All right, well, we had to let Alderman Blanton go because of her detective work go first, but I do want to chime in. Steve has been a wonderful teammate and a great heart for the community and the team, no question. And 28 years, and started as an inspector, worked his way all the way up. Nothing like his can-do attitude, and you haven't lived if you haven't had a grub hug. So you need to do that. If you haven't, get yourself one, and we'll have a chance to celebrate Steve a little more before the end of the year. But this is his last meeting in this setting, and thanks for finding that out, because we do want to do this public recognition, even though he doesn't want it, is well deserved. So thank you, Steve.
And I want to say too that sometimes when we call, they go, "Oh, he's out for a week or 5 days or something." I'm going, taking another vacation, huh? And he's always on a mission trip. Steve, we love you.
Well stated and well recognized. Thank you, Steve. And I have no citizen comments for items not on the agenda, and we'll continue to move through the agenda. Here's the game plan. I'm planning on a break after item number 11 at 5:40 p.m. So if you would measure your comments based on that timeline, and I'm going to be pretty serious about it. So we're going to start off with item number 1, which is Resolution 2024-93, approving a mural entitled Johnny Cash, Welcome to Franklin. Any questions or comments about that one?
We hope you like it because it's already there. But the Public Arts Commission has blessed it, approved it, and it is a nice addition.
So I have one question. So people are listening at home, and if this is in the minutes. So if people put murals up in our city, they have to get those approved if they're on buildings or fences or what?
They do, as long as it can be viewed from the public right of way.
then they need to get permission from the Public Arts Commission, and they recommend approval or denial to you guys, and you guys will give the final approval.
Does that include all residents, businesses, anything?
No, just in commercial areas.
Commercial areas, okay. Good, thanks.
Thank
Good
you, Monique.
clarification. Item number 2 is Resolution 2024-98 to set the special assessments for the sanitary improvements on Hamlet Drive, establishing a public hearing.
This is something we've worked with you all with throughout the year. We're proud to say it's completed, and it came in about $7,000 below the cost we had estimated, and our team delivered all of this. So this really gets us going on establishing this and then getting it ready for spreading those costs across those residents, and they'll have the better part of between when you approve it until, I believe, February of '26 to pay it at no interest cost.
Vice Mayor Brown.
My measured statement is that I really do appreciate the staff being able to do this yourselves. I appreciate being able to bore underneath there, not costing residents any more than we needed to. The fact that this came in under, I mean, really and truly, it was such a significant, meaningful project for those residents who are literally taking buckets of water out of their house. So I can't thank you enough for doing it for them. I know they're grateful. What an amazing service to the community and for those residents. So thank you.
I do apologize. It's taken a little time to get to this point, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through. So I appreciate the patience on that.
Great work.
Item 3, City of Franklin Contract 2024-0315 with Franklin Special School District for leasing premises located 507 New Highland Way 96 West for interim City Hall facility.
So this is the final piece of our facilities during the construction of the new City Hall. We have worked, and Vernon has worked in particular to you saw first the First Bank lease for those 3 office space components that close to the police building off of Columbia Avenue. This would be the existing admin building for Franklin Special School District. As they move out the early part of next year to their new building, this would become available. Our plan would be to put our fire administration and inspection staff in there, and likely a workout facility on the bottom floor. There's an entrance around the back that you can go in. We'll have a fitness center there as well for our employees. What we have now here at City Hall, we'll largely bring over there and have that available for folks. All this fits within what we had projected in the total costs for both relocation and moving and storage and all the different components, which right now projects out just a little bit above $4 million for everything, which is well within the range that we shared with you in the project budget. So this is a nice use and a nice partnership with Franklin Special, and thank Vernon for his work and figuring this out and working with the team at FSSD.
Alderman Berger.
Do we negotiate this at all? Because it, to me, seems a little on the high side.
We did, and it's fully furnished, and it covers all of our needs. It is actually less than the First Bank lease if you look at it per
So
square
we don't have
foot.
to move anything into it?
We really don't. We'll have to do some things with the fitness equipment on the bottom floor, but all the other furnishings, et cetera, are all included. So
Okay.
it's a all in for those aspects.
And what about the utilities?
We will pay those.
You have to pay those,
Yeah, yeah.
everything.
Just real quick, as Eric mentioned, staying within the budget has been a goal of our team working on this. What that does for us, though, in being out of this building, hopefully sometime in February, but the end of February is what we're shooting for. We're saving on the interest on our new City Hall, but also, any further repairs on this building that seem to drain our time and resources, as you all know.
Okay.
So.
And we talked about all of our utilities and all of our repair and maintenance work that will save us over $1 million in the operating budget in the life of the project.
Item 4, we're going to actually combine item 4 and item 6. Item 4 is ordinance 2024-34 to amend the Franklin zoning ordinance text as part of the 5-year update and amending the zoning maps, City of Franklin, Tennessee, to establish and rezone property in the Renew Regional Commerce District, RC4, and adopt the Federal Emergency Management Floodplain Insurance Rate Maps, updated maps into the floodway district and the floodway fringe overlay district, and 6 has to do with ordinance 2024-36 to amend the Franklin zoning ordinance text regarding materials, specifically materials in farmstead residential and the use of wire fencing. Please note the bold capitalization was not an error. That is a requirement of the state.
We have to say it a certain way. Kelly and Emily, take it away.
Thank you. Tonight is the culmination of 5 months of joint conceptual workshop discussions concerning potential amendments to the 5-year zoning ordinance update. And I'm going to highlight these changes for you. There are 3 natural sort of stopping points, so if I could ask that you hold your questions until those points, that would be greatly appreciated. Starting with state law changes, there are some changes related to telecommunication tower review timeframes, public notification related to annexations, landfill and solid waste facility approvals by BOMA, and a change related to case law that exempts individual single-family lots from sidewalk requirements when certain criteria are met. The FEMA floodplain maps have been finalized, and Franklin is required to adopt them prior to the end of the calendar year. So this amendment will update the zoning overlays related to the floodplain as well as the map panel numbers accordingly. The other rezoning proposed is related to Envision Franklin's update related to building height in the Cool Springs area. The new district is called RC4, Regional Commerce 4, and will have a building height maximum of 4 stories to help transition more gently to the surrounding residential areas. There is a transitional feature statement from Envision Franklin that will be codified into the ordinance, and it will also address building height to reduce the maximum height from 12 stories in RC12 to 8 stories at all the quadrants of the intersection of McEwen and Mallory Lane, and that's related to that Envision Franklin statement, except for the northwest quadrant, which has the hill on it. It's already developed. Envision Franklin recommends 4 stories there, so that's been included in the RC4 rezoning. And the farmstead residential building type. This is a new building type that is available in the PD district, and it's a multifamily building of 5 to 8 units with an agrarian or rural or farmhouse style architecturally to help implement the new neighborhood green and village green design concepts in Envision Franklin. Are there any questions on any of these so far? Okay, moving on. Okay.
Are you turned on?
I said I could not get on to the document, but now I finally have. But for some reason, it just said document not found there.
But you have it now?
I have it
Okay.
now. I have it now. But I didn't get to go through because like the floodplain map update is important and is we need to see it bigger than this, eventually. But let me see if there's anything else. As I say, I couldn't get on to the.
There are 11 different sheets of maps in the actual ordinance itself, starting on about page
Right.
60 that go through each of
Right,
these
right.
sections along the Harpeth River to show the increases and decreases.
That's the main things, what you were talking about, R4 and
That's starting around
and
page
McEwen
60.
and Mallory, and I do agree with the things that you said about McEwen and Mallory, because it's kind of strange there. That worked out just right, I think. No, sorry.
Okay, moving on to uses. Let me go.
Going backwards.
Oh, there we go. Uses.
Oh, goodness.
The first is adding accessory dwellings to the last 2 remaining zoning districts that don't currently permit them as accessory uses. This is also stemming from Envision Franklin's policy and would add them to the R2 and to the R3 zoning districts.
And this is one I'm not in favor of, but
The next is rural retreats, which is a new use proposed in the PD district as well. This responds to an evolving type of guest accommodations that doesn't align neatly with the hotel use type in the zoning ordinance, and it's modeled after Williamson County's rural retreat use type. And this use would be considered by the BOMA as part of the development plan approval process. Live-work units are proposed as well in the PD district, and that involves a single dwelling where there's both, the person is residing in the dwelling and has their non-residential space in that same dwelling unit. And these requirements align with the building code requirements that an applicant will see later in the process, so this just helps inform the applicant of the building code requirements related to this type of building and use. Microbreweries and craft distilleries are proposed as accessory to restaurants. This amendment really clarifies that the accessory nature of this use as part of a restaurant in commercial districts, and that larger scale microbreweries or craft distilleries are more industrial in nature, and they're classified in the industrial use category. And next, which kind of plays off part of the microbreweries and craft distilleries, light industrial and general warehousing is proposed as an available permitted use in the PD district as well. This would be considered by BOMA as part of the development plan review process on a case-by-case basis. It would add rules about specifically the characteristics of that particular type of light industrial use, and it adds some flexibility to, say, have a larger microbrewery in a commercial district where they're currently not permitted because they're more industrial in nature. Based on some of the joint conceptual feedback, there's also a minimum distance between light industrial and general warehousing uses and residential lots, so we keep that spatial distance from one another. Are there any questions about the uses?
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
The brewery, wait a minute, lost a page, whatever page that was on.
11.
11. Yeah, there I am, sorry. Right on. I'm not so sure that that works for some places I've visited, and they do have restaurants, but what percentage, it says here 10%, it's, your brewery is limited to 10% of the total square footage. Everything else has to be restaurant.
Yes, and when we studied this a little while ago, we looked at all of the existing microbreweries that were in Franklin and looked at their square footage, and they met this amount as accessory. This isn't to say that a larger microbrewery couldn't go in to a commercial area. It would just specify that the approval process for that would be coming to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, since microbreweries can have higher impact, higher potential nuisances to surrounding areas in terms of the noise, sound, traffic, truck delivery. It just a more intensive use because it gets into the industrial side of that, and there are some extra precautions that you all might want to consider when looking at the location of one.
So they would have to come get sort of an amendment to the, if they wanted more than 10%, if it was more than 10%.
They would need to submit a development plan for a PD rezoning for that. Right now, there isn't a means to do that other than being in the light industrial or heavy industrial zoning district. So this adds flexibility, but makes sure that the authority and approval rests with the alderman.
If they go over the 10%.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of some places I've been, North Carolina, different places, and one of the highlights is the microbrewery, is the distillery, and the outside space, and things of that nature. And I would say that might not come inside with the 10%. So I'm a little shaky on the 10%. I just, just because everything else in the city matches it, we pick 10%. So there's no give and take there.
This is just for the microbrewery and craft distillery that's in here is only when it's accessory to a restaurant. It's just clarifying the kind of splitting. Is this an accessory part of a restaurant use, or is it a full-on factory that's producing
Right, so
brews?
you couldn't turn it around and say that the restaurant was the accessory.
You can have more than one principal use.
So
on
if
a
the microbrewery
commercial
was the
site.
principal use.
So you could do that, but to do that, you'd need it to go through a development plan
Sure, okay.
process. Otherwise, it's in the industrial districts only right now.
There's a path to do it, but if it goes beyond this, you're involved in that conversation, which is probably a good thing. Yeah.
Any other questions about uses? Okay.
Keep talking about beer, we might be interested.
Next, we're getting into development standards. The first one is addressing infill in existing commercial shopping centers to promote walkable mixed-use development through more flexibility to add new infill buildings to existing strip malls with large parking lots in front of them to incrementally allow for more walkable systems on those sites. The next is telecommunication tower aesthetics, which is proposed to require them to be concealed either within architectural features such as parapets, bell towers, flagpoles, water towers, art, or to require them to imitate nature that's found in this geographic area. So no cacti or palm trees, for example.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I do have a comment on that on slide 14 when we're looking at these. The center image is an image of an American flag, of a flagpole. There is currently a flagpole that sits on top of the road adjacent to 65 near Royal Oaks. We're headed north towards Centennial High School. Is there anything in this that requires the owner or operator of said telecommunications tower to keep a flag on that pole? And I ask because many times I will see either a flag that's on it that's not to scale to the pole, or there's no flag on the pole that could be for months on end.
Have noticed that there hasn't been a flag on that particular pole in recent times. There isn't really anything that requires a flag to be on the pole as written.
What would it take to have, would we need to do that as a separate amendment after we pass this and come back to it?
I think we could work on a proposed amendment for you that you could propose it in the second reading, perhaps.
Okay, that would be good. Thank you.
I would just, okay. All right, thank you.
The next one is additional screening between new non-residential and existing residential, which would require non-residential to have either a fence wall or a berm along the edge of that property when it is next to existing residential. And that fence wall or berm is sited to best maximize the screening from the residential lots. There are adjustments proposed to the parking standards. The different types of residential are split out and live-work units are added. Rural retreats are also added and have a variable requirement based on the specific characteristics of what that rural retreat is. Offices are also proposed to be reduced from 4 spaces to 3 spaces to better reflect the new ITE parking manual, but not get all the way down to what their numbers are. We still don't know a lot about the future of office and parking needs, so we're just watching that. But this does shift it down to a slightly lower number.
Relevant and timely. Senior living communities are considered multifamily in this example, or?
If they're, well, it depends on what it is.
Not 55 plus,
If it's just a
IL or AL.
if it is a dedicated assisted living, or what we call continuum of care, that's a separate parking requirement and is variable based on what the demand is for that. Yeah. But if it's just age-restricted multifamily, that falls under the multifamily residential category. Signage on parapets. An amendment is proposed to permit one-story retail storefronts to have wall signage above the roof line onto the parapet, which provides flexibility for those low-scale retail storefronts that have high glazing, where the natural place to put the wall sign is above that glazing. So that just allows for more flexibility for those low-scale buildings. Expiration of a variance. The variance timeframes are also proposed to be extended to 2 years over 1 year. And if a plan is vested, that the variance expiration just lines up with that vested time frame. It streamlines everything for staff and the applicant as well. There are other minor changes to hierarchy and organization of a few chapters, and also some definition clarifications, reference updates, and other minor wording changes and corrections. And lastly, the timeline. It's also on the first reading for this evening, and second reading scheduled for November 26th, which is when the public hearing is, with third and final reading being December 10th, with an effective date of January 1, 2025, which will create our 2025 zoning ordinance. That's all for that ordinance, which is the 2024-34. There is a separate ordinance that addresses materials, and that is related to the farmstead residential materials that are proposed for the new building type, and also to allow for wire fencing behind other types of permitted fencing based on some property owner requests when folks have 4-board horse fencing and they want to keep their pets in, to put that wire fencing behind the other type of fencing. And that's all.
Alderman Baggett.
A few things, thank you. I just wanted to mention, there are a few, over the last few months, we've had a number of zoning ordinance discussions related to flags, short-term vacation rental, changes in our zoning ordinance. I brought up some other items relating to floodplain, third-party review of the FEMA changes. These kind of, I like that we do this in a 1-year time frame, once a year, or else we'd be spending, it was not efficient use of our time to do onesie, twosies. But I do also think that we need to have some provision where enough of these kinds of issues come up, we're too far along the process to get some of these things worked in for this end of the year update because of the timing of the situation. So I would just ask that those not get left behind, that we address those in the spring, possibly in a cluster. I just recall hearing some comments from Alderman about that short-term vacation rental and the flags, some good conversation. So I wanted to point that out. It is a bit frustrating because we do control the zoning ordinance, and how we can amend and make changes is largely contingent upon the timeline and when the issues come up throughout the year, and then being able to hop on board at a specific time in order for it to see it through fruition, which should be the goal. That as much as possible is in this the one process, and that is the goal. But so just take that into consideration, and maybe as staff think through how some of those one-offs that may be more time, that may be more urgent, may not be, and I think the city administrator has addressed the flags adequately at this stage for that, but just I would make those comments, and y'all think through that as other items might come up throughout the year.
Got Alderman Peterson, and we'll go to Alderman Berger.
Okay, you know, we mentioned the accessory dwellings, but we didn't show the two examples that, of that, because I have a couple of questions I want to ask about that. Maybe both of them, maybe.
Mr. Mayor, and Alderman Peterson, are you talking about the attachments? One's labeled R2, accessory dwelling example, and
And the
then
other
the
one is R3,
R3?
yes, I want to have both of those up. Is this the R3? This is the R3. Okay. Well, I'm on the other one right now. But a question that I had in, let me go, sorry, let me go back to it so I can see it. On some of these, like if you're looking over on kind of what I would call the right side, you know, that has, you know, and
Speak
everything.
up just a little bit, please, Alderman.
Okay, I'm sorry. Whenever you're looking at the right side, about the second one there that shows that, how is anybody going to get to that from the street?
So this is a bit of, thank you. This is a bit of an illustrative example from one of our subdivisions in Franklin that is actually the smallest one in R3 that's about 7,000 square feet per
Which is
lot.
small.
There are about 2,500 lots zoned R3, and about 80% of those are over the minimum of 9,000 square feet, which makes it much easier to be able to accommodate an accessory dwelling. So this shows limited ability to add accessory dwellings, but these are all smaller lots than the minimum that you typically see in an R3 district.
Well, this one right here says 8,752 square feet there.
That one
But-
is.
But what I'm asking is, how does one that's living in this place get back to that? Because there's only one driveway there, and I don't see how you're going to put a driveway back around to there.
There would likely have to be sidewalk connections from the driveway over to the accessory dwelling in order to make that particular situation work. This is just an illustrative example, as Kelly pointed out, to even see if there is space on some of the smaller lots where these exist. And that one is one that is under 9,000 square feet, but not all situations will have a driveway up to the accessory dwelling. They may just have a sidewalk connection to it. There are options for the property
And when you
owner
say a sidewalk on the regular lot?
on the lot around the house, yes,
So it's just just a walking path
sure.
there. So what would they do with their vehicle?
They could potentially also park it in the driveway where the driveway exists.
Or they could add a slip space to the side of their garage. A parking space is required for the accessory dwelling.
Exactly. So
But-
I'm just not seeing where that fits on these examples.
Sure. The interesting thing is every lot is so unique that there are multiple options for how cars are situated on the lot, as well as the accessory dwelling being situated on the lot. So really working through those on a case-by-case basis is pretty time consuming. So we really did a high level look at this just to see what could be accommodated space wise. But a lot of those nuances would have to be worked through by the property owner when they submit for their permit.
Well, if you pull that all the way and look at the very bottom, then that one over on the left, I guess, there's a driveway there, but that's around back, and it looks like on both sides of the house. I don't know how you could get in there.
It might just as well be that the accessory structure is placed on this side where it might make sense for that particular lot. This was really just an exercise to
understand that.
illustrate if they could be placed on the lot, if there was space and they could still meet the landscape surface area requirements and have enough space on the lot to do so.
Well, I know not very, at this point, even though we've had accessory dwellings approved in many other areas, there have not been a lot of accessory dwellings permitted and built. I mean, I had the list, but I didn't bring it with me.
No, there's not a large number of accessory dwellings that have been constructed since they've been allowed by the zoning ordinance. I do think opening it up to R2 and R3 may allow for some more variety, but a lot of these subdivisions do have HOAs that have additional restrictions. So it's really hard to predict if this will increase the housing diversity or not, but it is a tool in the toolbox, and it's something we can add to our zoning ordinance.
Well, the thing is, unless it's just right next door to you, because think about that's the concern that I have. And if you're in R2 and R3, you know, you're not like some of the other zoning situations that we have. So I really have a concern about it. But as I say, whenever after I looked at these, I thought, especially the R3 stuff, R2 maybe, but again, we'll just, as I say,
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you. Alderman Berger?
Yep, thank you. I would say too about accessory dwellings that would it be permissible to have on-street parking? I mean, if there's on-street parking available, that would be okay. I think, you know, every lot's going to be different. So every lot's going to have different requirements, and some may work and some may not work, and, you know, it's fine. You know, I've lived in different places that have had, you know, back in Virginia, I lived in a place that had an accessory dwelling unit right behind the house next door to me. And their in-laws lived there. And, you know, it's great for them. So it's diversity of housing, and I like that idea. But I think, you know, everything's sort of standalone because of different type of lots. But I just want to know about the street parking on that. Additional screening. You have this here, additional screening on page 15. Do we have anything that says anything about fencing? Because sometimes these wooden fences get put up for additional screening, and there's no way we actually can control that once it's put up, and people let them run down. There's so many fences around town. If you drive around, you just look at them and go, they're not maintained. And we have issues with them. I mean, I get calls on them sometimes. And if there's HOAs and stuff, that's one thing. But when you get into non-residential and then existing residential with no HOAs, we have any stipulations on fencing at all? We do? Tom Marsh is shaking his head.
It would just refer to the property maintenance.
It's a property
code.
maintenance issue at that stage.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a list tomorrow. I'm up here with that. The last thing I have is the commercial shopping center. We talked about infill and parking. Do we have any requirements to get rid of surface parking, any requirements for parking garages on infill? Or can we do anything about that? Because putting out more surface parking defeats the purpose of a lot of things we're trying to do in the city.
We don't have any parking requirements that would require parking structures because it really ends up being a financial
Yeah, it does.
decision for the property owner and what types of intensity or uses or buildings are proposed on the site.
Yeah.
But what this does, it allows for some infill buildings to slowly fill that in. And looking at parking it, and it may make sense for a property owner to really consider using structured parking and really taking advantage of that expansive surface lot and do it all at once. This approach just allows a little more flexibility in addressing the existing building that's on the site, that strip retail building, to let it continue without meeting some of our other requirements when there is redevelopment proposed.
The only other thing I can remember, or I want to say, it talks about screening here. We require, if you have parking lots that are up facing the street, like, for example, Chick-fil-A on Mallory, okay? Years ago, they had nice bushes along there, and they made them take them all down because they said they weren't large enough. Well, doggone it, they were still growing, but they had it, cut them all down. I mean, this is years ago. So they had to put up new bushes. And then I go and look at different places, like the fitness place over near me on Liberty,
Lifetime?
Lifetime. And we have this parking lot. Now, it's starting to fill in, but I know it takes a number of years. But I look around town and I think, we don't want these parking lots facing the roads and then we see a sea of parking. Are there any other criteria of screening that we're going to be talking about or requiring to do a better job of screening the parking along some of these thoroughfares?
Well, there's nothing proposed with this particular ordinance amendment, but that is something we can add to the list to consider for the next update if that's something that you desire us to look at further. What we typically see is when new sites come in for development, they are required to have shrubs to a certain height along the perimeter of their parking lots. We do not release their surety until they reach that height. However, a lot of times they get replaced over time, and we are not monitoring it at the same level as we do when we have a surety and we're doing constant inspection. We do our best while we're out in the field, to when we notice those things, contact property owners to ensure that they're in compliance with their originally approved plan. But that just doesn't, we have one landscape architect that's dedicated to doing that for the city in addition to development review. So I think we have to be really cautious about what we want to require for perimeter parking lot screening and make sure that it's something that can be achieved in the long run and that we can make sure is maintained into the future.
Yeah, I would just ask that we review the materials.
Okay,
Because
certainly.
sometimes I think the materials are not enough, and they're not the kind that are going to grow enough to really do it, and then they end up taking them down or something of that nature. And then there are also some materials that just are not well maintained.
We'll put that on the list to review.
Okay, we're going to move on now to, can we do 5 and 7 together since they're on the same property? So the first is ordinance 2024-31 to rezone 2.55 acres from R2 to PD 11.76 for the property located at the intersection of Carruthers Parkway, Daniels Drive, 3595 Parkway, lofts at CHP PUD, and then the other is the development plan for the lofts at Community Housing Partners.
I just wanted to mention, this is Ariella Stanford. She's one of the planners in the planning department. Some of you have met her at Joint Conceptual Workshop before, but she's does a lot of our work with the Board of Zoning Appeals, and she's also starting to review some development plans. So this is one of her earliest BOMA meetings, if not the first.
Thank you, Emily.
Let her rip.
I'm trying to get this map pulled up really quick.
While you're doing that, please introduce yourself down here.
Here we are. I'm Wayne Weaver, the CEO of Community Housing Partnership. How's everyone?
You're good. I'm Greg Gamble, landscape architect and land planner consulting for Community Housing Partnership.
Okay. Ready, Ariella?
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you. The proposed development is repurposing an existing building to create 30 multifamily dwelling units for senior adults and adults with special needs. The project meets the goals of the Envision Franklin design concept and special considerations. There is one modification of standards for parking. Staff is in support of the modification of standards as well as the rezoning and the development plan. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, I've got a speaker card for you. Let her rip.
We're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
The facility's already been purchased by Community Housing Partnership. We are just trying to get the rezoning positioned in a way that they can start work.
Any questions from the board?
Modification of standards on the parking is obviously appropriate here.
Yep.
Okay. Continue to move on. Thank you. We'll now go to item 8, which is Resolution 2024-91, amending the Shawnee PUD subdivision to extend the vested rights for the property located south of North Petway Street and east of Shawnee Drive, located at 1101 Shawnee Drive.
Thank you. This vesting extension request is pretty straightforward. This is a project by the Franklin Housing Authority that was approved in February of 2022. They had some issues with their funding and budgetary requirements, and they had to reduce the overall number of units. But the finances are in place, but they just are requesting this extension to make sure they get all their ducks in a row.
2 years.
2 years.
2-year extension. Okay. Item number 9, which is Resolution 2024-92, authorizing the use of a competitively sealed proposal procurement method for the preparation of a transit master plan for the Franklin Transit Authority.
The title addresses it pretty well. Want to work with Franklin Transit Authority to do a master plan. This would put it out for proposals, and we just need that authorization. Just a preview of coming attractions. We've asked the chair of the Transit Authority, John Shore, to come to the next work session, talk a little more about some of that work. So Alderman Baggett, I know, serves on that board as well, or Vernon's worked with this as well. So anything to add?
I think Commissioner Shore will have plenty to say at the next meeting, and we look forward to that. It is exciting, though. I think we're moving in the right direction with the Transit Authority, and thank you, Vernon and staff, for helping us get there.
And just, this gives us a little bit of a jump start to get the RFP out there. We do want to leave it out for advertisement for a period of time and get the best qualified candidates. Just so you know that, as I put in the memorandum, 80% of this is covered by federal funds, 10 by the state, and 10% for us. And, this resolution does allow us to look at experience, at the scope, as well as the cost. And that's what we'll work through with Patrick, John, and the FTA. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernon.
Item 10 is Amendment 1 to the City of Franklin Contract Number 2020-0246, Employment Agreement with the City Administrator with Mr. Stuckey. A little background for the audience is Mr. Stuckey is my direct report. I guess that's the best description. And periodically we have reviews, and we ask the board to fill out certain forms, and which is a kind of a standardized form to give feedback to us on his performance. I take that and then review that with him as far as the board feedback and have those conversations. What this is an extension, well, his contract requires that 1 year out from the expiration of his contract, that we let him know whether we have intentions to continue to have him in our employ. And so what this is it creates that direction to go ahead and give him the indication that we want to continue to have him as our city administrator, and also adds an amendment to his contract which extends his employment for another 5 years. Now, Shauna will do a much better job explaining it now.
That was perfect. I have nothing else to add. This is pretty much standard contract. Everything about the contract remains the same, except that it extends starting January 1, 2025, and it will be in place for 5 years. And again, by December 31st, 2029, which is 1 year before that contract expires, we would have to let your decision be known as to what you want to do at that point. Again, the salary is in here. The salary is specific to what it is right now. Again, like all other employees, the city administrator is allowed to get merit and COLA along with the rest of the employees. So it won't stay that way. That's just what it is right now. Otherwise, the rest of it is the same.
Ready to keep moving? Item number 11, which is discussion regarding the water and sanitary sewer cost of services study and rate plan.
So as they're coming up, we are trying to give you as much information as we can about all things impact fees. I heard some of the discussion last meeting, and this is work that has been underway. It was helpful for us to hear the discussion and guidance that was given on road impact in terms of phase-in and grandfathering. And so that has been integrated into the discussion of where water and sewer fees may go, especially the sewer piece. As you know, we are working on the additional capacity that is needed, projected about 9 to 10 years out. That sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. When you think about the permitting and the design and the bidding and the construction that all will be required, this is really the structure that helps us support being able to build that capacity, and goes towards what we've talked about earlier in the year, which is the idea of, at the southeast location, the capability to have 3 phases, each at 6 million gallons a day of capacity. And this would deliver that first phase and set the groundwork for future phases as well, in terms of how you do that. So we've had Hazen come in and give us additional guidance and expertise to review this and look at kind of the practices and industry standards for how you look at and allocate these costs. You'll see some options within that. Obviously, there are other pathways we can go on. This is a little different in that the utility world, your options are very limited. There's not a way to subsidize it with property taxes. You're really looking at ratepayers, and you're looking at how your impact fees contribute to our ability to deliver a project like this. So this will show you how those two interact. So if you do one thing on impact fees, here's what it means in rates and how those are connected to one another. So that's what the study is designed to provide you with. We've got a good amount of time set aside for it, and I'll let Mark and Michelle say anything they want to. We have Fernando and Scott with us as well from Hazen to talk through and present to you.
So yeah, just a couple of quick introductions. To Michelle's right is Fernando Aranda. Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. And then Scott Woodard down on the end, down here, and Michelle. Go ahead.
So just to keep your interest, this is board credit, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm keeping you enticed.
You get credit for this. It's Michelle and her team.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Fernando Aranda. I'm with Hazen and Sawyer. I'm rate/financial consultant. I've been helping utilities navigate the intricacies of rate increases, impact fees, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we are in the industry in terms of rate increases, how you compare, and kind of the options that you have with your sewer impact fee specifically, and how are you going to be able to fund that treatment plant is going to come in 2030, and what are the impacts and scenarios that we can look at. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we go about rate studies and some of the results of an analysis for the impact fees and the scenarios that we looked at in terms of impact fees and sewer rate increases at the end of the day. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on in terms of the inflation trends that we're seeing in the industry right now. So CPI, inflation. You've seen this, you probably know a lot about it. Since 2009, cumulative inflation has been about 41%. After COVID, you can see that trend actually going up. One thing that the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks is water and wastewater bills inflation. What are the consumers are seeing in terms of the water and sewer bill. That in the last 10 years, since 2009, has been almost double the inflation. So people are seeing in the water and sewer bill a high inflation above the normal CPI. And part of that is because of capital costs. This is one statistic we usually looked at, and engineers looked at it a lot, that tracks the inflation in terms of capital costs. That's called ENR. It's a magazine. It's called Engineer News Records, and they track the inflation. And as you can see, starting in COVID, that inflation started to increase even more than the history you can see since 2009. Another way or another capital cost index that you can look at is the PPI. That's what producers see in terms of construction costs. Again, 2020, inflation in terms of construction just increased more than normal inflation, more than anything else. Something else I wanted to show you, this is an index called Morrison. They're a comparator of ENR. They have a slightly different methodology. They only looked at 7 cities instead of 20, but it tracks construction costs. So what I wanted to show you here is how construction costs have really gone up more than inflation, double, triple than inflation, and actually has been going up more than the water and sewer inflation. The numbers that I showed you there is kind of the average that we're seeing in terms of each one of those indices. So water and sewer bills in the United States have gone up by about 5% every single year since 2009. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is that the increases that we're seeing in capital costs, I feel that they have not really been incorporated into water and sewer bills. Utilities are seeing increased costs in capital costs, and now they're starting to fund those projects, but those increases we're going to see it maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. But these give you a really good idea of a really good context of where we are in the nation in terms of increases in the water and sewer utilities. And part of the reason why I wanted to show you the capital is because water and sewer utilities are some of the most capital-intensive utilities in the world. What I showed you there is how much each one of those companies needs to invest in assets before they get the first dollar in revenues. So imagine Southwest building or buying all of those planes. You need to only invest 79 cents before you see the first dollar. When we go towards the utility sector, Xcel Energy, which of course is more regulated, they need to invest about almost $4 before they see the first dollar in revenue. Now, do you care to guess how much you have to invest before you see the first dollar in revenue from your customers or cost recovery? You probably already see it.
We've already cheated. Look.
You have the presentation in front of you. So yes, it's around $8, and when you compare to some of the utilities, your neighbor utilities, it's very consistent. It's about $8, and this is not outrageous. What I wanted to show you there is in Denver and in the West, where water resources are very scarce. They actually have to invest more. And what I want you to take out of this is that as a utility, you need to invest in a lot of capital so you can then recover those costs through your customers. And it's very capital intensive at the end of the day. And one of the strategies that you have is impact fees to recover some of these costs. So one thing I wanted to show you is also where you are right now. Where is your utility? And this is some graph that you're probably familiar. This is water survey of neighbor utilities at 1,000 gallons, and the same for sewer. And Franklin is around there in the middle of that group. If we go to the next one, it's the same comparison, but at 6,000 gallons. So this usually is a very important thing to remember, is that how you compare to your neighbor utilities is always good to look at and see where you are at the end of the day. Yeah.
Are any of these, it'd be interesting to know, and you can follow up afterwards, of these utilities, if they're at the tail end of their capital investment, or if they've had a recent large capital expenditure. I'm curious to know, like, yeah.
That's a great question. And for someone that have been doing rate surveys for ages, that's one of those things that sometimes is difficult to measure. I have a trick, not a trick, but I have a methodology where you can look at adjust those like the average bill, you adjust it by kind of the percentage of the asset that being depreciated. So kind of to adjust for exactly what you're looking at. I haven't really done it. I don't know. It's one of those things you have to go through their financial statement, but that's a great question, because that's something that is true. You might have a utility where their rates are actually some of the cheapest, they've just been delaying some of the infrastructure. So sometimes it's difficult because the apples to apples in some of these surveys is so difficult to really get to it. But this is just to give you an idea where you are what we're seeing in terms of cost, and in some ways that you're not alone. Like we're seeing that 5-6% increase across the board, actually for the utilities that are well run and that have good plans. Just to give you something I saw in the news in Colorado yesterday, one of the utilities in the Front Range, not a client of mine, they really delayed rate increases, and they just approved a 50% increase for next year. And part of it was, and they acknowledged, it's like, oh, well, we really fell behind in improving our system, and we didn't increase rates. And I'll show you why how you can avoid that. So let's keep going. So, oh. Let's stop. Well, okay, so part of what our scope and the study that we did was a financial plan, cost of service study. And when we do that type of studies, we kind of follow three steps. The first one is we need to figure out how much we need to really run the utility and make sure that you are financially healthy. That's what we call how much. That's usually done through a financial plan. The next step is called a cost of service, where we figure out who needs to pay for what. We allocate costs, and we figure out how much each of your different customer classes cost to serve. And after that, we go to a final one where we design rates. That's where we talk about volumetric versus fixed. Right now, in across the presentation, I'm going to talk about revenue increases, how much your revenues need to go up. How does that translate into rates? It's going to depend on that third step that we're really not going to talk about today, but just wanted to keep in mind, if I say 5%, it's 5% your revenues need to go up. How to achieve that? There's many ways in terms of rates, but just generally think about like an across the board when your revenues need to go up. So just to keep that in mind. So when we do a financial plan, what we try to do in that first step is to figure out your revenues and your expenses. Usually we call it sources and uses of fund. Your uses of fund or your costs are, of course, your debt service, capital improvement, O&M, but also your policy targets, which is an important thing that as a utility, you need to make sure that you're meeting. How are you meeting all of those costs? Well, you have different sources. Of course, your rate revenues, you have debt that you can issue, you might be able to get grants, and of course you can usually sometimes use some of your cash balances. At the end of the day, your policy targets are really are set up by policy by you, and one of the policies that you currently have is to meet a 1.25 debt service coverage. That means that your net revenues need to be 25% more than your debt. And that's just a good financial policy to make sure the utility is healthy. The next one is you want to have certain cash in reserve to make sure that you can meet any type of requirements. So for the financial plan, we try to meet 60 days of O&M to make sure that you have enough cash in there. And the last one is actually very specific to Tennessee. The state requires a utility to have positive net position. They look at it in your case as the water and wastewater as a whole, water, wastewater, and reclaim as a whole. But one of the goals of the study is to make sure every utility has a positive net position. So that's something that we try to look. But at the end of the day, as Eric mentioned, you have only a few options when you're looking at a financial plan and in options for the utility. I call those the levers that you can move when you're calibrating a financial plan. In your case, and in the majority of utilities, you have, of course, you can issue debt or you can increase rates. Sometimes, let's say you start issuing debt, at some point you're generating that service. So you need to also increase rates and also to meet that debt service goal. So it is a balance of debt and rate increases that we're trying to find. And the last thing in your case is, well, what about connection fees? If you do a study and impact fees, when you do the study and you figure out you have the ability to raise those based on that study, and that's something we're going to look at today. So, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do with my financial plan? I'm trying to, with time, plan ahead increases that are low, predictable, and consistent year after year in such a way that I don't have to do large increases at the end of the day. So you have in the horizon a $325 million treatment plan in 2030. The idea is to start early, do those plan increases, and avoid having to just wait until 2030 and having to do like that client in Colorado. No, it's not my client. That utility in Colorado that did 50%, and that's when you start hearing from your customers, when you see those increases. Every study out there in terms of the psychology of increases, small predictable increases, not that anyone is going to want them, but they tend to understand and be more open to those as long as they're planned and consistent. So that's what I'm trying to do with that financial plan and with some of the scenarios that we're going to look at next. So we updated the impact fee for sewer based on mainly the scenario of the treatment plant that's coming online, or that was going to start being built in 2030. So let's talk a little bit about impact fees. You probably heard a lot. You heard about transit and roads and parks. But in terms of water and wastewater, the impact fees are, again, one-time charge that is trying to pay for the capacity that you need to invest for new growth. And it follows the concept or the philosophy of growth pay for growth. In the industry, you have really three methodologies. You can say, I have existing capacity in my system. I'm going to charge that based on that value of that capacity, and I'm going to pay my customers, or I'm going to use that to reduce rates. The other philosophy is, I don't have any capacity left. I'm just going to expand capacity in the future. I'm going to charge you for that. But in some cases, many utilities like yours, you have some capacity left and you're going to expand. So you need to use what is called the hybrid approach, where you look at both and you do an average of those values. So in the most simplistic way, a capacity fee just takes the value of your system, divides it by the capacity. That results in a unit cost of capacity. And then we assess the fee based on what we expect the customer to demands to be. And that's really what an impact fee is. And one important point that I always want to mention, an impact fee is an economic analysis, is based on assumptions, and is going to try to recover that cost of capacity. But at the end of the day, growth, the way we behave, is never going to be perfect. So it's really not a cash flow analysis. You can charge and calculate the fee perfectly, but if growth doesn't happen, you might not recover all of the costs. So it's something to keep in mind in case you want to find me later and say, Fernando, 20 years from now, something happened and the fee wasn't. So just please keep that in mind. So how do we calculate the fee in your case? So the first part is your existing capacity. You have, based on our calculations, 38 million in existing capacity and 3.4 of available capacity. How do I got to that number? Okay, so I look at your assets. You have about $380 million of sewer assets valued at replacement cost, new less depreciation. I need to remove any contributions. I don't want to charge for things that your customers didn't pay for. It's contribution that it usually is developers that pay. Also, I need to adjust for that, because if I'm charging you for an asset that later on you are gonna pay for it on your rates, I will be double counting. So I need to discount that. So with that, the net value is $180 million. You have about 24% of available capacity. 180 times 21%, that's $38 million. That's the existing capacity. So that's the first number that I have there. The next one is your new capacity. You're gonna you need to build and expand that plant in 2030. That value of capacity is $445 million for 6 MGD. Fernando, you mentioned the plan was $325 million. Okay, yes, that's in there, but 70% of that is assumed to be funded by debt. The interest of that debt is included in there. So those two numbers added together, and I add all 4 numbers, so $38 million to 445, and the capacity that is available and expanded. I divide that and I get a unit cost, which is going to be 5150 gallons per day. The next step is just what is the assumption of a regular or a single family equivalent? The assumption is 350 gallons per day. So if I multiply 5150 times that, I get a impact fee of $18,000 per single family equivalent. Now, something that is important. This fee is what is defensible, and it's usually called the maximum defensible fee. I can go to war with this because I'm following industry standards, and I know that this number is defensible. It's up to you. It's a policy decision to adopt the fee that you consider most appropriate. More than that, I couldn't recommend. Less than that, that's your choice. And that's where we're going to look at some of the scenarios. But that's important to remember. Just because I calculated that doesn't mean that you have to adopt, and that's the only number that you can use. Any number below that is a policy decision that you're more than welcome to do. Yeah.
The 350 gallons per day, as far as SFUE, how do you see that stacking up versus other communities? This one thing we heard back in November of 22, that $350, or not $350, that'd be nice, 350 gallons per day seemed high.
Yes, but sometimes you need to account that sometimes you have I&I in general. So it's not really I&I, inflow and infiltration. So it's not what just the customer is using, but it's really what on average is getting to the plant. So that's why you adjust that number and might be slightly higher than what people on the indoor portion are really using. So and that's some of the adjustment that Brian looked at. And right now that 350 is way on average with what customers are using.
Also, no, per single family equivalent. It's gone up since November of 2022. You had estimated 16,000 per SFUE sewer impact fee.
Yes.
2022. What's changed? I mean,
So we've dialed in better the cost of the plant with the technologies and with the sizing. So you all decided on, remember, went through that big thing about the size. Yeah.
so that first phase was like $6,000 that we increased.
Yes.
That's the existing capacity that you have in the system now.
So, well, we increased it. We increased
To that
it.
level, yeah.
So I'm just trying to back it. So does that mean we need to, and you're probably getting to this, I apologize, but does that mean we only need to increase 12,000?
Yes.
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, so the fee currently is
Just under 6, yeah.
just under 6. So
I think
it needs
5940 or something like that.
Yeah. It needs to go to 18,000. So just as a few summary in terms of this, again, the impact fee or the calculation that we did is 18,000. That's the maximum defensible. You can always approve or adopt a lower fee. The adoption and the timing has an impact on the sewer rates, and that's the next part I'm going to talk about. One thing to mention is on your code, you have automatic inflationary indexes based on CPI, which, by the way, that's a great thing to have in code. I know of many utilities that don't have anything like that, and then when they update the fee, they have to go up by a lot. Utilities that tend to have that indexing are way above the, or they're keeping that cost going, and because construction costs increase, and as we saw in the slide, so it's something that's very good in your case. So let me show you some scenarios and what happens to the sewer rates at the end of the day, depending on the impact fee that you approve or you adopt. So I ran 4 scenarios. The first one is, what if you just leave the impact fee alone? Your code, again, allows for indexing. I'm assuming 3% of inflation. Hopefully it stays lower than that, but that's where I'm assuming right now. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is, what if you phase for 5 years the fee, instead of going all the way to 18, you just go to 12, kind of in the middle between 18 and 6 where you are. The other scenario is you do a 6-year phase-in like the road impact fees, and you take it to 18,000. And the last one is, what if you just implement the fee, the full implementation of 18,000 in 2026? So again, this is going to have an impact on your sewer rates. The costs are the cost. The cost of the plan is still going to be there. And how do we fund it? the impact fees is going to be one of the strategies, but the impact to your rate increases is going to be based on that. So that first scenario, let me show you, and I know that I show you a graph with exactly the same, and I would love to smooth those increases. But one of the things that's happening is you have a big debt service payment in 2027, and you need to do some increases to meet that debt service coverage. So that's why 26 and 27 you're going to need about 5.7%. 25 there's a 2.1%. That's already on code. It's only on the fixed service charge, but it really just going to generate 2.1%. So I'm accounting for that. In each of the scenarios I talked about, those 3 years are the same. Really what's going to change is the rest. So again, if you don't do anything and let the fee just increase 3% by inflation, the increases in sewer after 2028, it's going to be 2028 through 2033, it's going to be 5.4%. Now, what happens if you go and implement and adopt a fee of 12,000? And again, you phase it in a 5-year at kind of equal increments in every year. The increase goes down from 5.4 to 4.4. So you're going to have to rely less on rates, and more you're going to receive more revenues from impact fees. In the third scenario, where you do the 6-year phasing to 18,000, that 28 to 2033 goes down to 3.1%. And then if you go and adopt the fee right away of 18,000, that 28 to 2033 goes down to 2.5%. So again, the fee and the costs are in some ways stable. The plan is $325 million. How we fund it is going to depend on some of that strategy. So let me show you in the next the next graph is just what's the cumulative impact or cumulative increase for all those years. So we have 2, 5.7, and then it is different between the scenarios. So that's the cumulative increase for each one of the scenarios. Now, each scenario also have a different debt assumption or a different debt issue in each one of them. So, and of course, if we have less revenue from impact fees, you're going to have to issue more debt. And the more revenues you get from impact fees, the less debt you need to issue. And in the last graph, we can show you how much of that mixture of impact fee versus rate revenues you're going to get. The bottom of that graph is the rate revenues under each scenario. The top is the impact fee. So again, if you don't do anything, you're going to get about $77 million, assuming a 3% growth, which is what you're seeing recently. If you go to 18,000 in 2026, you're going to get about $211 million. And that's the difference in terms of how much of the funding is going to come from rates versus. So,
could I ask you a question?
Sure.
You mentioned the 1.25 ratio.
Yes.
Do all those
Yes.
address the 1.25,
Yes.
which is the state?
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's part of it. If you see that scenario one, you have $254 million. That's not really a 70% that we assume, because what happened is that you need to increase rates to meet that service coverage, and at some point you start getting more fund balance. So I reduce the debt to find that best mixture of debt and rate increases that maintains the 1.25 and the 60 days of 1. So yeah. So the last one is just a summary of the scenarios, the scenario 1, 2, 3, and 4, and how much rate increases are necessary each year versus the issue debt in each one of those cases.
Please.
Can you go
Alderman
one
Vega.
slide back? Bottom right quadrant, make sure I understand this. This is assuming, so the full increase, I'm wondering why isn't the totals of these, why don't they equal? Interest is probably part of that. I'm seeing the bottom, the more darker colored shading, that's ratepayer funded.
Yes.
That's the debt, right? Ratepayer funded. And there's a $30 million difference between option, the full increase, and then the 3% increase. So ratepayers are having 30 million more dollars that
Well,
they,
because you're increasing less, the rate by less. So,
this is assuming the same total spend though for each option?
yes, but remember in option one, for example, you're issuing more debt. So now you have more debt service. So you need to recover that.
The full increase, we're issuing more debt?
Yes. No, in that one less. But you need to meet the 1.25.
Just the inflationary.
So even when you end up with a little bit more cash.
So would you say that we're over collecting? I mean, that's 576 million versus that we're collecting under the full increase version.
Well,
So if you add the impact fee 211 million and the ratepayer funded 365 million, that's 576 million. And if you add the 300 on the option 3% increase, 398 plus the 77.
but you will have to add the proceeds from that. So if you add those all of them, they're actually end up kind of at the
Explain
same
that.
level.
You explain that to me.
So, yes, on the first one, you're getting 398 from your customer plus 77 from developers. But you also get $254 million of debt. So in the last one, you issue a lot more debt, but then you get a mixture of rates and impact fees to cover that. I guess
So then
that
that's
gap.
not really showing us, but that would equal, is inclusive of the interest expense on the bottom right quadrant?
Well, that's only revenues. That's not the cost.
That's revenue generated.
Revenue, yeah.
You really need to look at both those charts
Right.
together. The
What
one on the
other
left
chart?
shows your total debt. The one on your right is your total revenue generated from what sources? Correct?
But you see what I'm saying, we're collecting,
But for the full increase, you only issue $114 million in debt. That 100 million, 110 million delta is not reflected in the right chart.
but we're still, the rate, I'm thinking about the ratepayers, and the ratepayers, though, are paying $30 million more under the 3% increase. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah,
they're paying that over time more in rates, and there is a higher debt burden as well.
Yeah.
You really have both of those going on in that scenario.
And the
Yeah, and the blue, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
keep it as it is. Yeah.
There's going to be an increase in each and every scenario. But yes, in the first one, you're going to have to increase more rates, but also you're issuing more debt, and you're kind of getting into that process where you're going to have to increase rates by a lot to meet that debt service.
So one of the things we've targeted is generating 30% in cash, so that we don't have to issue as much debt as we did in what we've just completed. So we have that target, and we've got to get to that cash component some way. So part of that is through either the ratepayer or what we generate through impact fees. So that's part of it, and then there's the debt that goes along with it. So you really got to look at both of those charts in tandem to see the whole picture.
And there's a graph that I didn't include here, but it really shows, for example, on one side all of your costs and all of your revenues. So, for example, that debt will be on top of this other one, but you will see all of the costs, and they actually all match. Total, there might be some slightly difference, but that's really another way of looking at it. But it is the way you're thinking about it is, why is this cost? But this is revenue, and part of that revenue is also your debt. That meeting all of that. But yeah. Good question. So that's really it. I know I have some other. Oh, again, what I wanted to bring back was what these scenarios look like in terms of an annual average increase. You saw that the first year and the second and third were slightly different. I wanted to bring it back to, again, what we're seeing in the industry. And I think that it's actually a testament to good management from Franklin Water Department, that even with a $225 million and even with the not increase in the impact fee, you're still going to be around what that average increases are. And many utilities that are facing high capital improvements, they're actually seeing increases in the double digits. So to me, I think that having these scenarios and being able to be below that inflation in water and sewer is actually a good goal and a good target. So, yeah. Which I can tell you, like, oh no, you don't need any increases, but unfortunately, I haven't seen that happen.
Like benchmark this 4.6 average versus our average utility bill. So was it the numbers previously on the slide? I'm thinking about the capital cost, but that's not, what should I be looking at? If 4.6% of what? Of that, so if we go back to
the
40 or the $35 for 6,000,
the one, no, with the $6,000,
the 6,000 gallon one.
Yeah, so it will be 4.5 of that.
Of the
Of the 50.
Oh, so water and sewer, so 46 and
the
57, so four, you know, that's
No, the
$90,
survey of,
$90,
rates.
$100, so $5 a month.
Yeah.
For $4.60. That's that's the 3% change
Yes.
per year.
Yeah.
That's
Per month.
per month.
Per
Yeah.
month, yes.
We are fortunate if that's the 3% do nothing on impact fee implication to ratepayers.
Yes.
4.6%, I think it was.
Yeah.
That really is not bad. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
And if I understand, the 38 million was the capacity we're not yet using in our old plant.
Correct.
It's the cost of that we're not using that you're carrying forward and adding to.
It is the value of the asset that your customer have already invested in the system. So we actually, when we call buy-in, we actually consider as this developer is actually reimbursing those existing customers for the investment that they already did on unused capacity.
So it's not cost still remaining, it's the value already paid for that you're pulling out of that.
Correct, yes.
Because I thought it got added to the 4.
Yes, to calculate the fee, yes. And again, as an economic analysis, not as a cost. It's a cost that you already incurred, your customers invested in that capacity, and we're included into the calculation.
I mean, by the way, fantastic job.
Thank you.
It is a whole lot of money, and it's hard to kind of take it all in, but you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And obviously, these are just 4 scenarios. And as Fernando said, that 18,000 is the maximum defensible. We picked 12,000 because it was a midpoint. So if you have a different sensitivity, he can run that and tell us what that rolls through in terms of rate impact. So we are open to guidance on that as well. But this gives you at least a good understanding of how that might be tweaked if you adjusted that dollar amount or that phase in. But we used phase ins that were similar to the direction you gave us 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago on road impact to try to give you at least if you treated it like that, how might it roll through and impact the rate side of this?
Am I right by thinking, because I hear what you're saying, but I just want to make sure, if, let's just say the average bill just is $100 for 6,000 for water sewer. That's kind of about what it was on the 6,000 gallon. So that makes the math easier for me to do. But scenario 1 at 4.6% and scenario 3 at 3.2%, we're talking about $1.40 difference per month for. Am I thinking about that right?
For every year.
Yeah, for every year.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, yeah, it compounds every year. But I think we need to think through the scale, like the magnitude of this and the impact on the citizens, because I think that's really what it comes down to. And so for staff to come back,
So
I think,
could we give you like the 6,000 a gallon user, what that looks like in each of these scenarios
Yeah.
between now and 2033?
yeah, I think that would be helpful
Okay.
because you're right, it does compound, but it's not that
Yeah.
much per month per se. $1's important to everyone, but I'm just saying, but that this is tens of millions of dollars in the scale of everything, and also just taking into account what we have to do here, and maybe some more flexibility we have on impact fees. Whereas the road, we have to fund our capital with debt with rate. Here.
Right.
We don't have to do that
Yeah.
on roads, and so if you're going to have an impact on on development impact fees, just, you understand, we have some, different rules on this that I think might, we don't want to, you know, tinker too much with, like you said, going out and building a $400 million plant and then development not happening because we've, you know, bitten off the entire chunk and it's on top of our road and our park that we're about to hear about. Can't wait. So yeah, I just think I'd love to see that.
I think one thing I'd like to add is that, and Fernando pointed this out a little earlier, that kind of step 3 is defining or designing your rates essentially, and that's not yet been done. So depending on how you design the rates will reflect how the changes on our customers will be different. They can be very different.
Meaning like this, I'm sorry.
The fixed versus the variable components.
Fixed versus
right?
variable, you have different customer classes like non-residential and, you know, we've got irrigation water. Do you want to look at that differently? So a number of different pieces, but we'll huddle. So
We have the averages, like the average use and the average bill. For the typical, you know, you have a one-person family and you have a 4-person family, or you have a 3-person family, or you, and so I think we have to have a handle on, you know, this is serious stuff here, but I think we need to know when these rates are going to be raised, how does that affect everybody?
Correct, and that's the next step.
Yeah,
Usually this one is high level.
Yeah.
What are the increases overall? And then you go into, okay, now let's do the rates. And we there's a second step, which is the cost of service that is going to tell us, for example, maybe irrigation might need a higher increase than multifamily, or commercial might need a lower increase. So that's the next step. We really go into the rates. And how to,
So I don't know how you do that, because that's all calculated out, analytics, and how you would analyze commercial versus retail, versus residential.
And we have methodologies, a standard
sure
that we do those calculations. But in that, one of the things is you have many scenarios additional. When we pick, let's say, one of these, let's say the 5.7% or the 5.4, when we pick that one, then we go into the design of the rates. And then in there, you might have different scenarios. You can put it all in the service charge, all in this. So imagine if I use those 4 scenario times 4, that's 16 scenario. I don't want to
So if we picked 1 or 2 of those, you could break that down into those categories. So we would have a more realistic view.
And actually now thinking about it in some ways, regardless of the scenario, 2026 is 5.7%. So that's one that we can definitely run.
Yeah.
We got Alderman Blanton.
Yeah.
Bless your heart, this is not my gift, so I'm glad that it's yours. Remind me what our current sewer impact fee is for single family. When we're talking about 18,000.
That's the 6,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna turn my microphone before I say something bad.
And we still have water to go.
Yeah.
Yes, but water, there's no impact fee changes. Oh no, we want to go.
We weren't going to talk about that tonight.
Oh, you weren't?
Thought this was going to be heavy enough.
It's pretty heavy.
You've got 4 or 5 slides.
Yeah.
We've got in our little schedule here probably about 10 minutes.
Sure.
Can you knock that out? There is no impact change in water.
Correct.
This is just what the rates need to be to hit our requirements.
So this is another way of showing. So this is really another way of showing the financial plan and some of the information, because we were looking at scenarios. It was difficult to really show all of this for sewer. But for water, we're really just looking at one scenario. There's no the impact fees we're not proposing any changes. So these are your O&M costs that we're expecting from 2025 going forward to 2031. You see they're really steep. Why is that? It's Harper Valley. That's your biggest bill, and we're expecting, or we're projecting that they're going to increase the rates about 5%, which is what we're seeing in the industry, right? Next this is your current debt service on water, and the next one is your capital improvement. So this is the water capital improvement plan from now to 2031. Now, let's take a look at your revenues. These are your revenues under existing rates if you don't make any changes. So you can see 2025, you're fine. You can cover you could cover O&M, debt service, and some of the capital. But starting in 2026, with those projected increases, you're actually gonna start running into a deficit. Now, you're gonna still have fund balance. The next chart really shows you your fund balance, your debt service coverage, what your minimum, that yellow line is your minimum fund balance that we're projecting, and the changes in net position. Right now, the changes in net position in water alone, they're negative. As a utility, water and sewer combined, you're positives. But one of the goals is to drive that net position positive. So how do we fix that? How do we fix the running out of money in 2029? Well, this is the scenario. With water, you again have on code an increase, which is 3.1%. You will need about 6% from 2026 to 2031 in order to some ways move that trend and be able to fund O&M, debt service, and the majority of the capital. So in the next one, you will see that 2026, debt service coverage get to that 1.25, and then it starts going up. Now, you could say, like, we're generating a lot of cash. Yes, and part of the problem, what I have to keep that 6%, to make sure that changes in net positions are positive. I'm planning that that's going to be done in 2031, and that's part of the reason with the 6%. So you go to the next one. So this is a summary of the increases. In your ordinance, the increase in water generates 3.2%. You'll need about 6% in water until 2031 to cover that. Sewer, actually, you need a little bit longer period. You need to 2033. Water, after 2031, it goes down to about the inflationary increase, about 3%. So,
Unless there's something else.
no, that was it.
How you go on slide 23? Oh, it's not slide 23. There's no, but the water financial plan, the last. Yep,
This one?
that one.
Okay.
You mentioned your largest operating cost is Harpeth Valley.
Yes.
How much of that is Harpeth Valley in the
Jeez. I have to go back, but it's the biggest bill in the
$1 million a month? No, not that much. It's probably less than $1 million. I mean,
It's about two. I mean, it varies. It probably averages 350,000, 300,000.
so we're putting in place this possibility of reclaiming on this new facility.
Yes.
And that was I've been talking about since I met you out there at the demonstration. We're paying a lot of money for water, but we should be getting some water out of this.
Yes.
How
after
is
after
that
2031? No, I haven't
It's not modeled in that?
No. I wait. I model it and I have it in the
You
model.
got it in the back pocket.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. But
You're a back pocket guy.
Yeah. Exactly. The only reason is because I just analyzed until 2031, but that really is going to be an impact after that.
So, water and sewer, help me understand. Water and sewer, if we adopt this rate plan, do the revenue could those new revenues from the water be used for sewer? Like, is this all the same balance sheet? I guess is what I'm saying. So, or because we have a lot more impact on the sewer side, obviously. We don't really have a lot of impact needs on the water side. Is this revenue able to be used to offset that in some of those costs?
Not
possible?
really, because the total costs are the same. So you might be able to transfer between some of the utilities, and that was something that we were talking about.
The deferred expense that we won't have.
Oh,
so if we save $300,000 a month when we start to reclaim that water, can that help offset?
But you still need to build the treatment capacity to do that, which will have a cost to it as well.
And that's contemplated here?
No.
It is
It's
not.
in the other one. It's in the sewer.
Yes.
Well, it's in the sewer.
The capital
The
cost,
capital
not
cost.
the
The capital cost.
not the revenue increase.
Right. Not
So-
the revenue increase. Right.
And
So-
there's a water treatment component that is not factored in.
Correct.
So you've got a capacity today, and if you were really going to add to your treatment, you would need to add capacity at the drinking water plant to do more of
Yeah.
this.
So this plan goes to 2031. That's when the new plant would be online, right? So we wouldn't start seeing any of those savings until potentially after that.
And I know it
This
wouldn't be
is-
immediately, but it would be over the life of the debt of the sewer. So it wouldn't be immediately, but over the life of the debt of the sewer plant.
Yeah, and we will have to evaluate and actually model
It's
that.
not going to change, I don't think, what we do here, but I do think if we knew that there is possible relief in years 10 through 30, that there could be, that I think that's
What would
helpful
you
for
do
us to
with
know
it?
as well. Well, I think you pay off the debt of the, you pay the debt
pay the
early
debt.
of the sewer.
Could you do that? You could also.
That's what I'm
If you
asking.
start generating more cash, yes.
Yeah, you
of
could take
course.
that and pay,
But we don't
like
want to
Patrick
lose,
says.
we're not wanting to lose our Harpeth Valley second source of water either, so it's a
Right.
balance, right? We're not
Yeah,
going to
you're
eliminate that.
you're never going to be
But
able
that
to
we're
treat.
not- that's right.
You're never going to be able to
Never.
treat enough.
That's right.
To
Never.
not use them as a secondary source.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of how much you could do with what we have now. We have 3 treatment trains there now that could get close to 4 million
Right.
gallons a day. We generally operate 2 of the 3 and sort of rotate among the 3.
Okay.
So we could look at what that could generate, but that is not always on all the time.
Understood.
So there's some trade-off there. If you wanted to try to add even more capacity, that would be a further capital
Well, I think we
investment.
just need to think of that as a safety net, though.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
something we need to think about in this case.
But you
but-
All right, you're eating into your bathroom.
But you could take that money to
And
pay
I'm gonna
that-
make you come
start
back
paying
at-
that off, right?
But
Five-
wait,
If at that time, yeah, your cost goes down, of course.
You can't.
Yeah, but something I want just to mention is, and part of the reason why I read them all this, because it's so far away that the numbers are going to change. That's one thing. With all of this plan, you need to update every 2 or 3 years. If there's something I can guarantee, it's that the numbers are not gonna be exactly what I projected. If they are, oh my God.
All right, we need to be back in here at 5:50.
Thanks.
So.
But treatment's not included in that.
Proposed Parkland Impact Fee Ordinance Amendment. Item 12.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. So before we get started, I want to take a minute. We had a great week last week as the department, the Heritage Foundation recognized the department with the Historic Hayes Home and Friends of Franklin Parks. And so I just wanted to share that information with you for those that may not have heard that we were proud as a city to receive that award, and we thank the Heritage Foundation. But we also brought one tonight because we want to show our state organization. Our conference was last week in Murfreesboro of all the organizations, the county and city and state parks of state of Tennessee. And the city won an award for a new facility under $500,000 for Thompson Alley neighborhood park. And so just wanted to share this award with our engineering department, our planning department. They played a huge part in that, and with you all and our citizens. It kind of goes right along with, it really goes right along with the conversation we're about to have with Parkland impact fees, because this is a neighborhood park, and 90% of what this program is made up of are neighborhood parks. So anyway, we're very excited to be able to bring that home, to be named out of the entire state of Tennessee to win that award. So anyway, congratulations. Thank you. We're going to kind of do a little bit of a tag team. I have Heather Subio here with me this evening. Of course, Kevin Lindsay, that you all know, and Chris Franklin. Mark decided to come back to the table, and we appreciate that. But we're going to start it off to where Heather's going to provide a little bit of some background. Several of you were not seated at the time that we did an update several years ago. And so we thought that would be important. Then Kevin Lindsay's going to discuss a little bit more from the ordinance of why we have quadrants and why Nexus is important, and the projects within those quadrants and where we are to date. Then I'm going to kind of bring it back to how we include this in the master plan. We have a 10-year master plan within the Parks Department, and the ordinance of the parkland is included in that. Once we receive confirmation in the direction which way to go, then we will update that particular master plan to bring that back forth before you for consideration. And then finally, Chris Franklin will also look at the fees and the options that we'll have presented to you tonight. So, Heather?
So just as a little recap, in 2020, we amended the Parkland Impact Fee Ordinance to allow for clarifications to definitions for dwelling units, parkland dedication, phasing, and total parkland impact fee. We also did the structure of timing of payment at 25% of the total parkland impact fee, and the remaining, or the 25% was at first residential final plat, or if a plat is not required at the first building permit, and the remaining amount will be prorated per building permit as phase developments come in. And we also wanted to do clarification for the time amenities must be constructed within a development, and clarification for eligible offsets. As well as that, we restructured the dedication levels to allow for 100% of 5 acres or more of a park to be, when a density allows and within a given feasible area with director's approval, to include land value as determined in the ordinance. And then after initial 25%, to allow for private park open to the public to get that remaining 75% back. And then for private only parks to have 50% of their eligible offsets. In Appendix A, Chapter 25 amendments, we removed some of the redundant language. We also inserted figures that were previously in the original ordinance 2016-25 to improve for efficiency for updating both the municipal code every 5 years and the Williamson County reappraisal that's scheduled for every 4 years. And then in 2023, we amended the ordinance again to allow for those developments coming in that are both public and private as a hybrid to receive that remaining 75% back once we take that 25% and put it in the given ordinance. That public portion of the development will be treated as a 50% rate, and the remaining 25% will be for private only. and that's for both hybrid, private, public offsets. And then we also included detached accessory dwelling units as a fees only, and then those developments that have 12 dwelling units or less to pay as a fees only as well.
Thank you, Heather. Good afternoon or good evening. So I am here to talk about why the PFIs, why the Parkland impact fee is. That fee is currently at $4,304 per unit per development on residential as it comes in. The fees are collected and by jurisdiction to fund the cost of public facilities that are necessary for new growth. Now you might say, what's the money used for? And this means the money can be used for land acquisition, easements, development of new park property, trail system connections, and so on. The money cannot be used for our historic parks, i.e. Hardinsdale, Roper's Knob, all of our historic parks, Eastern Flame. It also cannot be used for maintenance of existing parks. So no maintenance is being pulled out of these funds. So back in 2014, some of you may have been here, we had the distinguished gentleman with a British accent, Dr. John Crompton, come down. And he was a professional back then from Texas A&M. And he kind of more or less enforced in us to go ahead and get the quadrants going. We already had the quadrants drawn up. We were using the quadrants. But he's the one who really showed that we need a nexus to that quadrant. Now, the quadrants that we have in place that are coming up, at least if you, we have 4 quadrants. Now, I don't want these to get confused with our street impact quadrants because they are nothing like that. We went back earlier and made sure that the city was divided up in equal parts, taking into consideration I-65 corridor and at that time the expense of land and what it was. Now we're seeing more development occur along that, I guess, that frame within a baseball throw from the interstate. So some of that has been changed up. So as we go to quad 1 here, or I'm sorry, let's talk about the Parkland Nexus. The Nexus here is basically the connection between the new development and the need for corresponding costs and the capital parks facilities improvements included in the fee program. That's basically about it. So we're going to spend the money within the quadrants, okay? And then it'll be up to your decision if we have a development come in that's on the line, just this side or that side. It's your guys' discretion on whether that money gets pulled or not, okay? Quad 1. That's the top right-hand corner. So what you might see here is some things that are called out. So since 2015, with the new ordinance rollout, we've basically got 25 of our parks that are up to date that have something to do with parkland inside them, whether that is a playground, a trail system, an easement, that sort of thing. What is shown here in quadrant 1, you might see Huffines Ridge. Huffines Ridge is one of those rarities, along with Areum when it is ready to hit the ground running, which they are moving dirt, but they have not pulled their first permit yet for residential. That's 10 acres for Huffine Ridge that will be donated at 100%. It'll be a turnkey park. We've already got a mountain bike trail associated on it, and we're waiting for the house to be constructed, which will be a museum. And then just to the side of that is another 5 acres that Areum is bringing in that will be a turnkey park that will also have a mountain bike trail on it that will connect. So there'll be 15 acres right in the heart of Cool Springs that, thanks to this parkland ordinance, it's happening for us.
Is that going to be all around that historic house?
It'll be to the side of it and on
North?
the land that is not developable.
To the north?
Yes, ma'am. North and northeast. Then we move on to, and in quadrant 1, we have around $10 million in that currently. In quad 2, basically, that you may say, well, where's Ladd Park? Where's Water's Edge? Well, they were prior to the agreement of 2015. But what we do have that's installed is all kinds of amenities in Ladd Park. We have a walking trail that's fixing to come online at Water's Edge, and I'm talking with them on a canoe access, probably going beside the new bridge at Southeast Park to get it out of the community because there's no feasible way for us to get a canoe access built on the backside of Water's Edge with the bankments. Worked out with several engineers, and it's just not feasible. So anyway, we got about 4.6 in that particular one. As we move on to quad 3, did I miss quad 3? Oh, quad 3, there you go. It only has around $700,000 in it. Development's just not taking hold in that particular quadrant yet. It's coming, but it's just not taking hold yet. So as we go to quad 4, we've got about 2.1 million in that particular one. And with that, I'll turn that over to Lisa. And before I turn it over to Lisa, I want to thank everybody at this table on this side for putting this together. We've had very many long meetings to talk about this, and I think we got the numbers right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So what you see on the screen tonight is, as Kevin was sharing, we do have quadrants, and the main goal is anywhere the development takes place, that's where you want that park, that amenity, so that those residents have access and utilize it immediately upon arrival to that particular development. This is a generic 5-acre park. As part of the master plan back in 2015, it was important to be able to show the development community, and as well as when we were taking a look at what would it take to construct a 5-acre park. And at that time, it was around 1.1 million to close to $1.2 million. And so it's just associated with it. We used this when we started with this program constantly with the development community. What can we build? What are we doing? It was really about them being able to kind of show up and share what their vision would be. And so, next slide, please. Today, we have taken that particular park, updated it. And so this is not the cost of land, neither was the one before. This is about constructing the park. So now with inflationary, we're looking at around 2.8 million. And again, it's 5 acres, it's open space, but if you have trails, if you do a pavilion, you do some type of court of some kind, really just a general play area, there is a financial impact to those things. Well, that allows you to see that there's an impact if we are going to perform the particular construction, or will that be by the development? And so what we're seeing is that we have to take a look at what is the metrics. And so you've heard this probably 1,000 times, is are they paying their proportionate share? And to answer that question, we believe you should ask that question in a different way, is what is the metrics that we used in order to get to that point? And for us, it's the National Parks and Recreation metric. We have over 25,000 members of agencies throughout the country that belong to this. We give information is when we do analysis for our park system. And in 2024, their analysis is 10.6 acres per 1,000 residents. And that's kind of the metrics that you use. So when you're looking at parkland, and that's important to share, for us, if you take the census numbers, the tax assessment numbers that we used in the parkland that we have within this particular, go back a slide if you will. Yeah, go forward to this one. Let's go to this one. That's okay. That's okay. What you're taking a look at is what is that cost? And so we have currently around 1,015 acres in our park system, in our overall. And to be able to do the analysis, you take the total acres of parkland and you divide that by population. And so for us, when we're looking at the 2023 numbers, or you're looking back at the 2017 when we ran the original analysis, we actually have around 11.45 acres per 1,000 residents. Now, what that means is it's not just about, if we take historical parks outside of our park system. So if we've got 1,000 acres and you're only looking at, and you extrapolate all the historical parks, because we've got other funding mechanisms to utilize within those, for those particular areas, such as a Harlansdale or Winstead Hill or wherever it may be. You have to look at then what is outside of the historical parks, and that's when you run the numbers. And so therefore then, you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. We have other funds, such as hotel motel, general fund, facilities tax. So we're not relying on just one fund to fund everything. You can in certain projects, and you'll see that with Liberty Park, but you will not do it with every other area. We say that is it's important that we are not deficient in land. And that's going to be a huge conversation that we're about to have with impact fees. Because really, usually you have impact fees to buy what? More land. It doesn't mean if the opportunity doesn't come before the board or to the Parks Department that there's an opportunity to buy more adjacent to a Roper's Knob. Of course, we should look at that. But it's not evaluated in the equation of parkland impact fees, if that makes sense. It should not be. So in saying that, again, Kevin already shared with you that it was 4403 per dwelling unit. There is a cost for land outside of floodplain or floodway, as well as we also include hillsides in those. And one of the analysis we had to do is, do you look at the land and the land cost? And should that increase or should that stay the same? If we're not deficient in land, and we're continuing to grow land in other areas such as historical parks, do you put that back into the equation for the fees for the next 5 years for parkland? Okay? I'm going to turn it over to Chris to kind of share with you the three options, and this will make more sense as we go through.
I'll try to make it make more sense. Sorry. So what we want to do now is discuss the methodology that was used in 2017 and how we then use that in 2023. So all these numbers we did earlier this year, we used 2023 numbers because it was a full year. And so we had population estimates, we had land acreage for our parks. So this all starts basically with how many residents we have divided by the acres of non-historic parkland. Okay, so in 2017, we had 70,000 people and we had 425 non-historic acres of parks. And that includes 425, sorry. So if we want to look at our service level in terms of population per acres of park, you would divide your population by your acres of park. So in 2017, we had 166 people per acre. Essentially, 1 acre of parkland served 166 residents. When we did the same thing in 2023, we had a population of 88,000 and 581 acres of non-historic parkland. That gave us a service level of 152 people per acre. So you can see that we actually gained more land than we did people, so our service level increased. Even though that number went down, technically, we have more acres of parkland per person in 2023. We then take that a step further and break that down into dwelling units so that we can set the dwelling units as our service level, which then is used to calculate the impact fee. So in 2020 or 2017, our dwelling units were 2.4 people per dwelling unit. That was, we used the population and divided by the number of dwelling units per the 2017 development report. So we did the exact same thing in 2023. We took the 88,615 residents and divided by the 38,448 dwelling units, which gave us an average of 2.3 people per dwelling unit. Okay, then we were able to calculate based on the service level of 152 people divided by 2.3 people per dwelling unit, that our service level was 66 dwelling units per acre. So essentially, we're able to serve 66 dwelling units per acre of parkland. Okay, this is important because this is what's going to be used as the denominator to calculate the fees. So parkland is technically two separate fees. It's the fee to buy the land and then the fee to develop the park. So in 2017, they did an analysis of all the unimproved residential property per the county. and they got a land value of $62,000 per acre. When we did the exact same thing last year, this is unimproved property in the city or on the outskirts of the city, that's residential, we got a land value of $150,000 per acre. So in order to understand what each dwelling unit's share is of that 150, we would divide 150 by 66 dwelling units, which would mean that each dwelling unit will be responsible for $2,266 of that 150,000. So essentially, if all 66 dwelling units wanted to buy 1 acre, they would pool their money and it would cost each of them $2,266. So that's just half of the fee. That fee in 2017 was $894 to buy that same acre per dwelling unit. Then we move on to the development of the park. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take the cost to develop a park nowadays, which per engineering's numbers and their estimates is $2.8 million. So that went from 1.2 to 2.8 from 2017. So when you divide that 2.8 by the 66 dwelling units, because they have to share in that cost, you get $8,592 per dwelling unit to build that park. So when we then add the land cost with the development cost per dwelling unit, we get a number of $10,859 per dwelling unit to buy the land and develop the park. So that's using the methodology from 2017. It's not necessarily what we're suggesting. We just wanted to be consistent with how they did it then and transfer that over to now. As Lisa said, the way things have gone, we haven't necessarily had a problem getting land. So this would be option 2, is to increase to the full price. Our first option would be to leave it alone, wait till next year, because the county's going to do a reassessment next year, and we're going to have special census numbers. So we will have way more accurate numbers on land value and population, which we can rebuild this whole methodology. You need to say anything? Okay. Then option 3. So option 3, we said, hey, let's just pause on the land. Let's just go back to 2017's numbers for land. We'll stick with that. That'll be $895 per acre or per dwelling unit per acre, right, to buy an acre. And we said, well, let's go with CPI from 2017 to now on the development cost of the park. So that's why you see the $1.5 million number to develop the park. And so then we would take that $1.5 million number and divide by the dwelling units, 69, and we would get a $4,372 cost to develop the park. Adding that to the $894 to buy the land would give us a impact fee of $5,267. That would be the third option. That's a little more reasonable, gives us time to get new data in and present to you next year an updated impact fee.
So that option 3 just gives you sort of an inflationary adjustment
Yes,
only.
only.
And it might give you, if there's further adjustment needed down the line, you've chipped away at it. But it does give you at least a little bit of an adjustment to acknowledge general inflation in the time frame of the last 6 to 7 years.
Is it appropriate to ask a question? You want me to wait?
Oh, sure.
I mean, not all parks are equal. Some 5 acres don't have all of what is on that example. I mean, I'm not trying to be snide, but it's like, look at the Pocket Park on Old Liberty, or look at Ewing Pool, which is supposed to be a park and it isn't, but it will be someday. I mean, it's not the same thing as a park that's got a playground and a basketball court and a pavilion with restrooms. I mean, and I'm debating, I'm not arguing. I don't understand why that's the example, because it's not really apples to apples.
That's a great question. So when you're looking at across the board, you have to look at what would it be if you did build a 5 acre? What would it be if you took the land and you did a typical, just a neighborhood park? So we're about to show you examples. Instead of what we would do, the development community turned it on top of its head. It is what we believe that we said that it would cost this amount, and we receive some type of funding across the board from every dwelling unit so that we can place it in that quadrant to a community park. So it might be building out for us, to give you a life example, if we were taking this for Bicentennial Park, there may be just a small section of parkland because we have it in the quadrant we are putting toward that overall park. That's the reason it's not paying for the whole thing. But when you look at if we were to want to do a Liberty Park, and we do have quite a few $1 million, then you may want to choose that this is your only set of money to put toward that project. Let us go through a little more. It might be able to see. We're going to show you an example of how the development community actually is utilizing their offset and then what they receive back.
Go ahead, Alderman Caesar.
I don't know that you'll cover this and I perhaps misunderstood some of the terminology you used, but previously you've said there's not a shortage of acreage or land. Is that suggesting, am I supposed to interpret that as we've not had to buy the land?
It doesn't mean we haven't purchased land. It means that we hit a metrics that we're above the standard from a national standard that we needed 10.6 acres per 1,000 people. So we're at 11. When you look at the overall parkland, when you look at our overall park system, when you only take it and utilize it for, when you extrapolate your historic parks, then it looks like we're at a deficit, but we're not. You have to consider our entire park system as a whole. And so therefore then, we are not suggesting, if we were at a deficit, then you need to look at the land costs that was presented tonight, that we're going to have to purchase land at $150,000 an acre. And so as the development community is purchasing at that price. But as Chris was saying, it might be worth waiting and let's see where the tax assessment comes in 2025 so that we can we've got COVID numbers mixed in here. And we believe that skews this slightly, to be honest. And so by waiting another year, it doesn't mean we don't make some type of decision, but by waiting, we can at least see a little bit more of a pattern and then come back and assess that in 2025, if need be.
So we wanted to throw one more thing onto option 3. As with other impact fees that you've been debating, potentially we could also throw in a 5%, 3% CPI every year, January 1 on the fee, whatever fee you choose. And this is just an example of how that would be if you chose option 3, how the fee would go up each year for the next 5 years with the CPI indexing.
So in saying that, let's look at an example. I want to talk just a minute about the Vintage Parkland. This is a particular project that went through the entire cycle. And we don't have that many that have gone through the full cycle and receive reimbursement because it's still, you've got them in large developments and they have to finish the whole development through their contract. This is Vintage, this is at South Royal Oaks and Oak Meadow, if you're familiar, where you've got Home Depot, Summerby Care, and this is across the street from there. What they had was, this was a 5-acre park. They were eligible because they wanted to keep it. If it's over 5 acres, it's up to us whether, if they want to donate it to the park system, and it's up to the city to decide, do we want to take this over or do we want that privately to still maintain? So therefore, they still maintain that. And so this was a 5-acre, 9-hole disc golf course, dog park, half-mile trail system. And they had 241 dwelling units, a parkland fee of over $1 million. And they were able to reimburse, we took 25% off the top, stayed in the quadrant that came to the city, and we reimbursed them at $77,000. $777,000, thank you. With the actual, is that the actual reimbursement submitted was 1.4.
Yes, so they actually submitted invoices for 1.4. They actually spent way more than that. This is just what they submitted for this because that's all they needed to submit. On here, we just wanted to give you a quick example of if we implemented the new fees, what it would do to this subdivision, how it would impact them. So under the new, if we did do new fees, the $55,300 one, they would owe 1.2 versus 1 currently at what they did pay. They would get back the same, they would get back 952 of that, which, where was this? Can you go a couple slides? I just wanted to show forward. Keep going. One more. So this is how it would impact them overall if the fee was changed. If the exact same scenario came in, they would end up paying $58,000 additionally with the new fee. Just wanted to give an example of how it works.
So
That's
one of
what-
the interesting components is you see the reimbursement goes up. Frequently, they're building significantly more than the fee, so this actually gives them a chance to recapture
Yes.
more of it. So the net impact is not maybe as much as you might think, given that reality.
And in reality, they're spending way more than the fee to build these parks.
The Vintage itself, and I know that we're out of time, and to get from our standpoint, the Vintage spent over $3.6 million on their parkland. And so what we are finding out is development is putting lots more in than just the reimbursement, that we're able to provide that offset. But we're also able to build something prior to the first CO is provided in that development. And therefore, then, it's making such an impact on this community. So again, just to recap, you can leave where it is. We can increase to the brand new based on the numbers that we ran, or there's an inflationary type of option here for you.
I love inflationary options. It helps us keep up with it. But you're recommending that maybe we come back with new numbers after the reappraisal, and is that?
I'd recommend you take a good look at the inflationary, because it's a fairly modest increase, but you know those costs have gone up. I think that's at least worth some consideration. I would not go to that full number. I honestly am not sure I buy the 2.8 million as a number. I think the baseline that we had is a decent one, because I think to Alderman Blanton's point, it is just a baseline. It's a baseline, and as you see, people choose a lot of different ways to get there. But we do want to provide a fairly consistent baseline for everybody. And I think a standardized inflation off of that previous number probably makes more sense than doing nothing. You're losing more ground. Doing the inflation, at least you're recognizing that piece, and doesn't mean we can't take another look at it down the line. But I think that would, to me, seem appropriate. But it's a policy call, honestly.
So what did you wanting to use inflation, but wait till next year for the census numbers and for the reappraisal?
Reappraisal, I think it's
Yeah,
gonna
I think
be
you could take
huge.
those factors and run some of these numbers again and see where that takes you. It's likely going to take you higher than that inflationary number, but at least it's acknowledging that and building it in. That's what I would at least advise you to consider. I wouldn't go to the big number, because I just don't think we are comfortable with that. But I think there is a path to look at the inflationary piece only, knowing that you're going to do some other updates too.
So I know we back out the historic parks. I understand that to get us to on average with the standards. But I don't know about my fellow aldermen, but I hear all the time, but we don't have enough ball fields. And we don't have enough, this community is short on ball fields. And I wonder, I just wonder if, like, overall philosophically, if we're getting more of these vintage parks, which is great, but also we're unable to fund maybe fields as aggressively as we would have otherwise, and if that average, including historic parks, which I'm a proponent of historic parks, as you all may know. I just wonder too if don't want to upset the whole apple cart, but also if we're getting more and more of these vintage parks along with development, and we still have pressure to fund ball fields, which we need more of. I think everyone out there in the community, I'm sure everyone, I see people nodding their heads, but I just wonder if that has been contemplated, if the incentives that we have with our fees are leading to more pocket parks, which is good, but then we're having to look to other things like our CIP for fields that we need to do to support the population growth we have and the sheer number of children and adults who want to play field sports. So not saying that is going to do anything with that here, but I think we need to think about that, because those fields are expensive, and I think everyone knows we need more of them.
Yes, sir.
So just maybe thinking through that in the next phase.
With Parkland, with this particular program, you're going to hit neighborhood parks. Now, every so often, you're going to hit to where the development will do something very large itself. but it will not be from our standpoint. We'll get mountain bike trails, we'll get the unusable land to be able to provide a recreation opportunity. But that 25% of that quadrant is where you're going to make decisions on more ball fields. And it doesn't mean, we're not saying that land, we wouldn't need land for specific uses. We're saying that when you look at the overall calculations, are you increasing that particular fee for that particular quadrant in order to fund something that not everyone's going to use?
And I understand that. I think but what we're doing is we're giving back Vintage $777,000, and they have a half-mile walking trail behind them, and it's beautiful. And then all 250 units, wasn't it, something like that? 241 units have, there's 50 kids in the complex now that want to go play on a ball, and we've used that impact fee for the walking trail behind their house. And and the developer paid $2 million more than the fee reimbursement to do it anyway. So I think, I'm just thinking in the year to come, maybe we look at.
And that's a bigger picture policy discussion, because you've made a decision to only allocate 25% to the broader community parks, which is where you're going to get the larger scale play fields. You've said 75 can go to these more direct amenities in the neighborhood that naturally happens with them. If you want to start to change that balance, you could. And we could explore that, and that would give you a little more of a funding base for the larger scale ones.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
and
something
the
to
other
think about.
thing-
We're running over on this item. I've got Alderman Peterson with one quick comment, then Alderman Berger with a very quick comment, and we got to move on.
I just want to say, I can remember many years ago, whenever suddenly, or not suddenly, the size of a single-family lot became so small that I remember somebody on the planning commission saying, you can't even put a swing set in the backyard. So really, we have lost all of that thing where people in, not just a subdivision or something, had a little place, as I say, where you could have a swing set. And, we finally get some of that in some places, but sometimes it just seems like somebody gives it to us, But we really need to be thinking about that as well as the bigger thing.
When we
Alderman
talk
Berger.
about five-acre parks and stuff, I'd like to see us do more active 5-acre parks. Like, we could have a field out there where kids could actually play soccer and practice and have pickup games. Basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, play equipment, restrooms, whatever. We need to make these 5-acre parks more active.
And just to that, many of the things in which you saw tonight through all those 4 quadrants, it hits every one of them. They're putting in pickleball, they're putting in swimming pools, they're putting in courts, they're putting in fields for their neighborhood kids. Those are the private amenities. And so they are doing that. We're just talking about from our standpoint of where that is.
And the ones that are not within the subdivisions and those developments, when they give us a 5-acre park somewhere or we obtain one, we need to make them more active. We're a small team of kids can go out there and have a pickup game or something. Throw
All
the
right,
football.
we're going to move on to item number 13, which is downtown paid parking and parking management.
Oh, boy.
Good job, group.
Thank you all. Good job. Thank you. All right, as folks come up here, we wanted to give some more background context related to what we're seeing in parking, some of the requests you're getting related to board decisions to allow for how paid parking can fit into parking requirements. So we wanted to give you a little more context around that and seek some guidance about doing some additional analysis of where that puts us long-term to maybe help with those decisions both now and in the future. So take it away, team.
We're just, Adam and Shannon are here with me. We all kind of have a little different topic around paid parking. So we're gonna just kind of take it one by one and I'll get it kicked off here. So some zoning ordinance background. Prior to the adoption of the 2019 zoning ordinance, we had our minimum parking requirements that were required for all land uses, but parking could be free or paid at that juncture. There was no specification on which it had to be. But around the adoption timeframe of that 2019 zoning ordinance, that was when there was a significant increase in the amount of paid parking that was being provided in the downtown area. There were a lot of free lots that were converting to paid lots, but we had no required review process for that conversion. So as the zoning ordinance was being drafted, there was a request that we consider that. So the step we took was for required parking spaces to be free and accessible to the public, but unless otherwise determined by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and that allowed individual property owners to basically come through Building and Neighborhood Services or the Planning Department, and we could work to get those items before you in a work session and in the form of a resolution for approval of paid parking. We did not have any further policy that said how many paid parking lots should be provided or what that ratio should be, because we hadn't really studied it at the time and we didn't have good guidance to provide. So we put this in here so at least there was a review process. So I'll turn it over to Shanna to kind of go through the paid parking requests we have now.
Yeah, good evening. Currently, we have 2 paid parking requests that are still awaiting resolution coming before the board, and how you want to proceed with them. The first is at 9498 East Main, the old boathouse where the pizzeria and the bakery are going in. They have 41 spaces of parking available on site, with 4 spaces being in the state right-of-way. Those spaces will eventually go away. The proposed uses require 93 parking spaces, so they are at a deficit of 48 spaces. The second address is the 127 Second Avenue South address, and they have 54 spaces on the site. They have excess parking, but they were wanting to mark all spaces as paid. There may be a change of use coming with this one in the near future that would also change the required parking count. So I will say that we have had a handful more requests come through that have been approved because the applicants were only charging after work hours. During the hours of operation of the businesses, free parking is being allowed, and they were only charge a fee after the business is closed. So, and I'll let Adam take over from here.
Thanks. So this is just a reminder from not quite 2 years ago of our downtown study. We lumped origin destination studies along with bypassing downtown along with parking. So we chunked out this little couple graphics here, a couple slides about our current parking capacity. It hasn't changed much since 2022 when we studied it. So you can see those spaces right there for free and pay currently. And the limits of that parking area are highlighted to the right of that graphic. Next one.
And just to clarify, the paid parking is in which color?
I think it's in the blue.
Blue, okay.
I'm sorry, pink, purple, pink. Yeah, so you can see those lots, the garage, the Harpeth Hotel. You can see all those, the paid parking there. And of course, the numbers for street parking make it look higher. So the little highlighted areas, you'll see more purple, but there's obviously free street parking. Our occupancy back in 2022, we kind of looked at those recently, walked through some of these lots. Don't think it's changed all that much. I did call the Harpeth Hotel, and they actually have an increase. They went from 3 to 4% to they're up to 10 to 15% occupied in the parking garage, and their paid parking garage now. So that, I guess, in a way, people are migrating to the pay if the free is full, right? The streets are full, the free garages are full, so they'll go that way. So, but other than that, we think that's stayed pretty even, especially for the free. And the next slide is just showing you in a bar graph format, our capacity, which is the orange line downtown in that area that we highlighted, and various study periods that we did back in 2022. We did Thursday, Friday, and a weekend, Saturday. And that kind of just goes to show you what the capacity is and what the availability is, so. And then overall, just from the two different parking studies, 2016 to 2022, you know, in that time, we had increased the 2-hour parking around downtown, and we saw a better compliance rate with the 2-hour parking for turnover, which was the goal of that particular ordinance. So that's it.
Just to add, there are a few planned increases to the downtown parking supply. We have the new city hall, the net gain on site would be about 128 spaces, and the Bicentennial Park surface lot has 47 spaces proposed. So those will be additional, adding to the supply of parking. Some of our concerns that we've raised are just, as paid parking lots continue to increase in downtown, we are concerned about the impacts to nearby residential neighborhoods, as there is on-street parking in most of them, and it is obviously free. So people that are looking for that free parking will continue to push into those residential neighborhoods. And a lot of the lots in the downtown neighborhoods do not have driveways, or if they do, they have a limited amount of space in their driveway. So a lot of them are utilizing on-street parking just for their own residential use as well. There's an impact to downtown businesses and the impact to our free public parking garages as they continue to be very well used. There's additional traffic generated by those searching for limited free parking, kind of circulating the downtown area and that additional traffic. And then there's a possible negative perception of the city due to the high cost of the private parking citations when people do park in a paid parking lot and get a ticket. And sometimes there's difficulties reaching a person to speak to about those citations, because a lot of the ones here require payments to be made online. So one option that we have talked about regarding that particular piece is that maybe there should or could be a local permit or license that would review some of those things and at least open communication lines between the business that is doing the parking management in the city. So those are just some concerns that we brought up. I think overall there's a lot of considerations to downtown parking, and I know myself, and I'm not a parking expert. I think that the implications to changing our parking requirements downtown would have lasting impacts, both good and bad, potentially depending on the policy change. So I think if we want to consider really addressing certain parts of downtown parking and parking management, it would be a good move to potentially hire an expert to really look at our policies in downtown. But if you like kind of the way we've been handling it and how we deal with paid parking, we can definitely look at little tweaks that might make it a little more efficient and effective. So I'd love to hear the discussion.
Alderman Blanton and Vice Mayor.
The two examples that you cited early on, I guess slide 3, I have a couple questions. On the first one, if they have a deficit of 48 spaces, for the last several years, that building, which is really sometimes 3 businesses, what has changed that they're now at a deficit where they may have not been before?
They likely have always been,
Okay.
but have not been
Understood.
required to
Okay.
provide additional parking.
And then on the second, number 2, I don't understand how we can mandate what somebody can do on their private property.
Yep.
How can we tell the property owner at 127 Second Avenue South, who I know, I'm not gonna say it, I'm being good, that you have an excess of spaces, but guess what? You can't do what everybody else did behind Main Street and charge. How is that appropriate? I mean, where?
I don't think you're telling them that. You're just saying they have a requirement to provide so many free spaces. They want to make them all pay spaces. So that's where your discretion comes in, whether to allow them to count that towards their requirement or not.
Okay, so I
So,
misunderstood.
yeah, this is kind of how you're not forcing them to, but this is what they're asking you to allow them to
But
count
I think
towards
what
their requirement.
happens, and it's a great problem to have, we have such a vibrant Main Street, and it spills out onto way beyond Main Street or Church or Margin or all of that. They are parking in front of people's homes. Margaret Martin has cones that she puts out in front of, she needs the company to come over. She goes, just drive right over them, it's fine. Like, they're there as a deterrent, but you can drive over them. I just gave a secret, but I think it's so unique because we have people that want to open businesses in our community and they don't meet the parking requirements. But how is that fair for somebody who has a shop on Main Street that may have been there for 30 years? They get to use what is their parking requirement. So I'm all about, I don't know that I would agree with said consultant because it ultimately is our decision, but I think some help would be great. I can remember Dana and I arguing when they wanted to take it to 4 to 2 and we're like, no, because people are going to be out moving their cars. Because what can you do under 2 hours if you're going to a movie or dinner or even court? I would hate to see us move to our free garages being paid for. I don't think we're that town yet. I think it'll probably get there someday. I'm not ready to do that today, but I'm all about getting some help of how we do this. But keep in mind, we are a unique bird. There's very few small towns like us that are situated 14 miles south of Nashville, you know, and have number 5 tourism in the state of Tennessee. But I think for those of us here, we will drive around. I will, and drive around until I find that free parking place.
Well, that's where you see the pressure. When you see the
Agreed.
chart that Adam showed you,
Yeah.
98% in those garages
Yeah.
and pushing 80% on the street. But that's with the turnover with the time limits. You only get that because you put a time limit in place. So
But then we have to deal with
that's what we're
employees.
seeing is that pressure.
That's why we need to park.
That pressure isn't going down, it's going up. And so there's more on the public free side that people say, well, there's no place to park. Well, there's no free place to park. There's plenty of paid options, but that's the tension we're seeing. And are there things we can do and how we manage what we have to make those work well together? And it's not necessarily how much is paid. It's like, how does the paid interface with what we have as public?
Well, and I
free
need to
now?
correct something because we were talking about happy parking several months ago when this first came up. And I was particularly talking about how they're never full. And he told me I could quote him, Tommy Shell, who owns a large portion of 4th Avenue and where behind, he chose to do that. But he said the reason why I do it and he makes money is to offset the tax increase for his tenants. And so instead of going up on them, that's how he recaptures that money.
Yeah, I got 3 people that want to speak, and I'll just go down the line. Alderman Caesar, then Alderman Baggett, then Alderman Berger.
I think you pull up a lot of good points, Emily, and the potential repercussions of adding paid parking into the community and specifically how it could push people into people's homes or keep people from finding a place to park. The one thing I would ask is with the redevelopment of the City Hall property and the new parking capacity that comes along with that and Bicentennial, before we go and have a consultant do the assessment, I do wonder, is it worth waiting until those properties come online to see how they shake up the parking problem that we're going to face? And while I don't like generally kicking things down the road, for me, this feels like a time where we're about to enter into a new dynamic of downtown. And I would hate to make a decision today without some more information that could affect tomorrow.
Thank you. And just to clarify, when I was talking about some of those impacts specifically, I wasn't really speaking that the 2 paid parking requests are necessarily causing all of those impacts. It's more of, I just wanted to clarify that, the whole paid parking scenario in general with the existing paid parking we already have as well. So I didn't want to make it sound like I was placing all the blame on one lot. or
Alderman Baggett.
Yes, on the outside consultant, I don't think we need to pause. I think we've got a problem at the moment. I don't think 130 spaces on the weekends, or however many the city hall is going to make. I think it will make a difference, and I agree, Alderman Caesar, but I think we've got too many, I'm hearing too much of this from Ward 4 people in the downtown. And so yes, on the outside consultant, and look at all options. Get someone, I said this the last time, to study the economics of parking in our downtown and give us some options instead of us tinkering with it like we're doing. Now, I do think we need some short-term tinkers, which one would be, yes, a local permit license for private paid parking lots. If I've gotten one, I've gotten 100 calls from people who think that we gave them a ticket in their paid lot and they're mad and we need to have some consistency there, and there needs to be requirements for those lot owners to mark and delineate more effectively, because it's not working. The last thing, and I'll be quick, is 9498 East Main Street. This highlights another problem that we're seeing in downtown, which is one of the biggest threats to our downtown, is that our current zoning requirements for parking in downtown are eroding away the historical uses of our buildings. The fact of the matter is that a restaurant has operated at 9498, a bakery, a
Earl's Fuchsia.
and has done so effectively, well, arguably, but effectively. And we are now, our zoning ordinance is saying you can't do that anymore. You know why? Because it can't handle it. That's not right. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. And and we've got that right there demonstrates what I've been saying, and we got to get that fixed, or else guess what? It's not going to be a restaurant. It'll be an orthodontist or something. And guess what that does? That affects our sales tax. It affects our tourism, because no one wants to walk down Main Street and go get braces. And that's what's going to happen. No offense to those who occupy spaces on Main Street that might be orthodontists. We got to stop it. Another one is on 3rd Avenue, and it historically was retail, and it's right next to paid parking, and now it can only be storage. And it was retail. And I'm not saying we don't have lovely people who enforce our zoning ordinance. We do. But that's what we have to preserve, or else we're going to, one parcel away, erode away the character of our Main Street. We have to at least maintain the historic uses that have been happening. I don't think you shouldn't be able to put a bar in the back of that, in that accessory structure that was historically retail. No, but the historic same use, you shouldn't be able to take an auto body shop and put a bar restaurant in there because the use is going up. But we should at least maintain the uses that have been there historically, or else we're going to have a bunch of professional offices downtown. And it won't happen in 1 year, but it'll happen over 10 years. And who wants to walk up and down, professional services row? No one does.
Thanks for being prompt. Alderman Berger.
All right, yes, on the consultants as well. Patrick, spot on. It's some of the stuff I wanted to say as well, so I won't repeat it. But I think at Charleston and Savannah, you go there, you're going to walk. You're going to walk to go park somewhere, to go to a store or to a restaurant. What's the matter with us? We're afraid to do that? No, we are getting to be more a walkable community, and we're talking about walkability all the time. So I think that, these places have operated over there, and I know many, many times I have gone to dinner over there in the past, and we've walked. There wasn't a spot in the garage at the time or something, and I drove in. I said, well, 2 aldermen are downtown. I don't get a spot there, but there's other spots in the garage, and sometimes it's loaded up. But we'll walk, and people will go there, and they will use those businesses. We don't necessarily have to say, well, you don't have enough spots there, so you don't get to do that. Also, I like to use some of these historic towns as an example. And when I walk the streets of Charleston, many year after year, I observed that they have a sign outside these residences, say residential parking only. But if they're not going to utilize that parking, and there's some additional spaces around, they have a bag, and they can put it over there, and it says, by city ordinance, reserved. So they know that they're gonna have guests there to park. And it says residential parking only. And then when they don't need it, they take it up so other people can use that space. So we ought to think outside the box a little bit of how we can rotate those spaces. Sometimes residents need them. Sometimes they don't need them. They got a long driveway. Look at former Alderman Bacon. He has a long, long driveway. He can park a lot of people down there. But maybe his neighbor doesn't, or somebody down the street doesn't even have a driveway. Who knows? So I think we have to start thinking, I think that's where the consultant comes in too. And then the employee part, I think something we're really missing here is this employee parking. We are not doing anything to solve the problem of employee parking. None of these employees downtown should be parking our garages and on our streets. We need an off-site place for them. And we talked about Bicentennial Park, and we ought to have a shuttle that goes and does this all day long for employees, because if we are a historic city and we want more visitors and we want to keep this place healthy, we will invest in that kind of thing. Along with the merchants, along with the other people, the Heritage Foundation, the merchants, everybody going together and solving that problem together. We have Bicentennial Park. We're going to have a lot of parking in that area. We've talked about utilizing that during the day. And it doesn't have to be 24/7, 7 days a week. It can be during, hours that these stores are open. So we need to look outside the box. I think we have a consultant. We need to talk to them about that.
All right, we got Mr. Gamble's going to speak, and then we'll go to the last item.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman, I'm representing the Keoly family. The Keoly family recently purchased what you may know of as the Anderson's Garage. It's a 1,200 square foot garage, and it has a Kwanzaa hut on it. Their vision is to convert that 1,200 square foot building to a restaurant, use the Kwanzaa hut for outdoor dining areas and kind of outdoor lounge on our Greenway Trail. Today, they cannot build parking in a floodway. The entire property is covered in the floodway. They have about 100 paid for parking spaces directly next door at the Heritage Foundation. And they have about 350 paid for parking spaces directly across the street at Harpeth Square. So they can't construct parking on their property, but they do have access to these paid parking lots. Emily, Kelly, Shanna, Amy have been great. They've been walking with us down this path for the last 9 months. We've been looking for properties to purchase within 1,320 feet to build more parking spaces. They need about 20. Or parking spaces that they can get a permanent lease easement on in order to satisfy the code requirement. They've been hitting wall after wall after wall. It's a very, very high hurdle downtown. We're excited to see that the city of Franklin is contemplating building 350 additional parking spaces in Bicentennial that would be inside of that parameter. But we're, in that right, in Bicentennial Park? Maybe I'm wrong.
It's not in the project right now.
Oh, it's not in there right
Not
now.
as it
Okay.
is right now.
I saw it as a part of the master plan. I'm jumping to conclusions. But this is an area of town that has some parking available. They would like to request that they be included as a part of a BOMA work session in the future where they can be a part of this conversation that you're having now. It's very parallel to the parking issues. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the time.
Okay, we're going to move on to items 14, discussion of the 10-year capital improvement plan.
How much time do you want us to? 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes?
I think 15.
Okay, all right. We'll cover some basics. We know we need to come back to this, but we'll cover some basics for you. Paul, talk a little bit about the prioritization that we received from you. I would say that, I'll comment a little more after he talks on that, but that's really a first cut at your priorities. We want to make sure you're all looking at that, and there may be some other considerations to fold in. I'll let Paul reflect on what we got from you and how to maybe think about the different ways to classify what we heard.
Okay, so this is the same way we ranked them last time we did CIP update, is essentially this first spreadsheet is a non-weighted. So if you voted for it, you simply got 1 point. What that doesn't really reflect, though, is what was your number one priority, 2, 3, and so on. And so what we did is in the second ranking, essentially your number one priority project got 13 points. Number 2 got 12 points. Number 3 got, and so forth down. And what you can see is the projects that landed on top, I'll just hit those quickly, is Goose Creek Bypass, both sections of Eddy Lane. I never thought I'd get the chance to rebuild Eddy Lane, so I was excited to see that. South Margin Street, Fifth Avenue intersection, Fire Station 3 upgrades, and then Mallory Lane and Cool Springs Boulevard improvements. All received more than 4 votes, 4 or 5 votes or more, and were essentially the top ranking projects. The ones that you see in yellow didn't score as high in the weighted section, but did have more than 5 votes from the aldermen. So I wanted to highlight those ones as well, which was the Battle Avenue Bridge Replacement, Harlansdale North Pavilion, Winstead Hill Park, Collins Farm, Greenway Trail, and Chestnut Bend Trail Improvements project. And so from there, you can really just start to see where you guys concur on priorities, and wanted to just facilitate a discussion over it. And I'm going to let Eric chime in.
Yeah, let me touch on a couple other just considerations I'd like to, go ahead, Alderman, you wanna? Okay. Let me just touch on a few things just in observing this, and some other things to maybe consider that have developed over the last month or so. First, I would offer a word of just sort of advisement related to Fire Station 3 that's on here. A couple different things to think about there. The last 2 fire station projects we did, we were able to target directly facilities tax. It gave us a really great straight funding source. You really can't do that with Fire Station 3 because it's an existing facility. So you're looking at that trade-off related to roads and parks and some other places there. I would say, in my general judgment on that, I think you need to address that. I'm not sure you need to address it in the 10-year window. So that might be something to think about. And the fact that we don't have the dedicated funding source we had for the other ones, I'm not sure we were as clear on that. So I just would offer that as some additional consideration. We have a dynamic too now that we have some bids coming in. We'll open a bid on Friday for McEwen 4, and we'll start to have a better sense of that. We have $30 million of federal money in that project, but Paul and Jonathan think there's an opportunity to get even more. So that could help us on some capacity. The other piece to just sort of, but the flip side of that, we have bids in on both the Southeast Park and on Robinson Lake. To live within your funding of those projects, you probably can't do Robinson Lake. You'd need to defer that in order to complete phase 1 of Southeast Park within the way we budgeted those. You could sort of put a pin in it, see where we get with other federal funding, et cetera. There's some consideration there. I will tell you, as you look at, none of this assumes any change in road impact fees. If you act on that, that does give us some capacity that we could make some conservative assumptions in the 10-year window of what that might add to capacity for roadway projects. So that's just something to look at. One of the things that struck me in looking at the priorities too, you don't see much on parks. And you have some areas, and we talked about impact fees a little bit ago, that have the opportunity to put some specific dollars forward that are in there. And that's just not something this process gives you a good way to consider, but that might be something we can help you with in looking at there as well. With all that factored in, we do have an opportunity to do an updated funding model. That's something we'd probably need a little more time to deliver on, but that could give you something to look at. The other thing I would like just at least some acknowledgement on is the opportunity for us to explore for you the ability to enhance our funding capacity. As we look at developing next year's budget, as we look at property reappraisal, where that puts us, there is ongoing dialogue about how TDOT is open to partnership opportunities and what that could mean for us for large-scale TDOT road projects in Franklin. I don't have a full answer on that today. It is still a bit of a black box, but the more we can put on the table, the better our chance is to address these significant areas, and specifically thinking about the legs of Mac Hatcher that need widening. We've looked at the Franklin Road area above, around Mac Hatcher and north. So all those are areas that we know are needs. We've identified to TDOT and really expressed the desire to say, hey, we're willing to be a partner too, because a lot of their philosophy in funding has moved towards how they can partner on choice lanes and what public-private can look like in that area, and that's great. But local governments can be really, really powerful partners as well, and we want to be in that game. So I won't go further into that. That's an ongoing dialogue. But if the board is comfortable kind of saying, think about that, you're not making a decision, but think about that as a way to help us get more done, both on our list and to prime the pump to get more done on TDOT's list. We would like that guidance and that freedom to work in that space and come back to you by the end of this year, early next year with some of those additional options that could increase the pie a little bit and give you some other options.
Alderman Peterson, and then I'll get Alderman Potts.
Yes, I want to specifically talk about the second and third one here, the Eddie Lane, where it talks about going from 96 to Fort Granger and then from Fort Granger to Liberty.
Yes.
First of all, that is a place where I do not think it's going to be possible to three-lane that road, period. There's just, the houses are right up close and everything. But the other thing is that I would like to look and talk with the people that are out there and everything, because you remember sometimes a number of them have come here to talk. But the other thing is to see if we can get this, that should cost a lot less money than what we see right here, and have 2 lanes and then have just a sidewalk on one side. And so I definitely want to look at that with some options.
Yeah, so we'll definitely, once the board makes funding decisions, bring back multiple options, engage the citizens, and ultimately present those to the board for a determination on how to proceed.
Please, because I think that we're saying that it's important, but this is not realistic, I think.
Well, and that one in particular is pretty high rated. We can maybe do some preliminary options for you to maybe see what that might change in terms of that number. And again, we're working within what the model gave us, which was about 87.5 million of capacity. So what do we do within that? And are there other things that open up some other capacity or options for you?
And we did really try hard to estimate them at today's dollars, but inflate them for when we thought they would actually get to construction. So some of these numbers, I hope, are actually higher than what they need to be.
Alderman Potts, and then I've got Alderman Barnhill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So briefly, Eric, yes, 100%, we need to move forward with TDOT partnerships. I think that is essential right now as far as both legs, as we've been discussing. The leg that moves driving westbound towards the West Haven area, as well as the southeastern piece needs to be connected. I will go as far as maximizing all of the resources that we have. If we need to do updated traffic counts in partnership with DDOT, whatever needs to be done there, I think is essential, because I think that can also help us when we're looking at some of these other traffic concerns, Goose Creek bypass and other areas, to move traffic in different areas. The other is a property reappraisal. If we're going to move that route, I'd like to go ahead and start seeing some figures on where we can go with that, whether it's holding a rate, setting a rate, et cetera. And then if we're going to look to, I completely agree with funding Southeastern Park. We're where we need to be with that. But if we're going to defer Robinson Lake, then I'd like to know what kind of impact that's going to have as far as the cost to defer that later down the road.
And one of the things that our team is looking at too is, are there some lower scale things we could do to still make that area useful but not do everything? What are our options at maybe a lesser amount that could keep us going?
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
Two comments. You might fill it in. That's one comment. And the other, we were asked to do a list back several months ago of things that we would like to see added on to this. Is that in here someplace?
To the best of our ability,
We
if you
added
gave it to
everything,
us, we added it in.
We added it on, okay.
And I certainly hope I didn't miss anything.
Do we want to give Does everyone want to give guidance on Eric's question?
Have at it.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty vital. I mean, I think for what we're doing, and it's a existential question for us. And I would be willing to look at the same rate only for those TDOT projects. I think we need to live within our means on our current projects and the projects we're expecting. No one could have planned for TDOT changing the way they are prioritizing these large, and every single major artery in our city is a TDOT road. The citizens are not going to wait till 2035 or 45 to get the second bridge on Macatcher going west built. It's just, and that's the trajectory we're on. So it's really, I don't want to. I wish the state would step up and do what they need to do, and we can opine on that more later. But I would say that would be my stance, at least examining.
Vice Mayor?
Ditto.
Brevity is great. Everybody good? Ready to dismiss? See, it's about 10 minutes, as best we can.
7:15.